to The Mother and the Whore, a Palm Door podcast. I am the mother.
No, you're not. I'm the one who returns DVDs. I'm the mother.
We just kid. The real title of this pod is Homework, a podcast about homework.
Starring my mother, Ingrid Bergman.
Welcome to Riviera Rats, a Palm Door podcast. I'm Greg.
I'm Bill.
How you doing, Bill?
I'm okay, Greg. How are you?
I'm okay. We are in the throes of our hobby-filled summers.
Hot hobby summer. That's what we call it.
Yeah. Totally. I just did 2 rugby tournaments. My body aches.
You did. You did a great job in Boston. There's some great shots of you flying through the air with your face like a billowy pumpkin, just hitting them balls. You know, you guys did great.
And you are currently about to do another production.
I am. I'm opening in Shaw's Pygmalion in a couple weeks. And, as is usual with this year of theater, I tried my costumes on the other day, and I'm even heavier than I was the last time I did a play, because that is how life goes when you are reaching 50.
It's an exciting production for you because you have an affinity for this play and all of its adaptations.
I do, yeah. It's a play I know well. It's actually the first play I ever did not related to school when I was a teenager, so it's always been very special to me. And My Fair Lady is a movie that hasn't really aged all that well, but I still have a great fondness for it because of how much I loved it as a kid. So, and I am someone who really feels the need to rehabilitate the reputation of Audrey Hepburn's performance in that film as well. So yeah, it is wonderful to be in it, and everyone in it. I mean, I was looking at my Facebook memories, and last year this time I was in my first play with that group, which was Shakespeare in Love, and 1 year later I'm working with a lot of the same people, and they're all dear friends now, and they were strangers last year, so it is really nice.
Have your co-stars in this production watched the Asquith version with Wendy Hiller?
I don't know. I know that our director has talked about it. You know, he talks about various adaptations in rehearsals. And that one's easy to find. So maybe they have. I don't know. If they have, they haven't told me. We don't really talk about it much. I don't like to talk about that stuff with fellow actors because then it sounds like I'm suggesting that they do what's in the film. Yeah.
Oh,
and
right.
so I kind of leave that alone unless it comes up in conversation. But yeah, that is sort of the definitive film adaptation of the original play, not the musical.
Today we are talking about the 1973 Cannes Film Festival. In the year of the decade when the Palme d'Or was once more called the Grand Prix, and when the Grand Prix went to 2 films. This is a decade where they do an ex quo quite a bit. In this year, it went to Jerry Schatzberg's Scarecrow and Alan Bridges' The Hireling.
And I have never found an adequate explanation for why they decided to scrap the Palme d'Or. I have seen commentary about it. I've never seen anybody like a definitive.
The history of Cannes is mercurial and elusive.
Yes, as we have frequently said. And as you said, this is actually the decade with the most ex aequo winners. There's 3 in the 70s, and there's never as many in other decades. There's also no American Palme d'Ors in the 60s. There are 5 in the 70s. And, you know, when they talk about the narrative of how European cinema dominated in the 60s and drew Americans away from their own products because it was, you know, movies for adults, and that the American cinema of the 70s was a response to that, you can see that reflected in the fact that there are 5 Palme d'Ors in the 70s and never as many in any decade since. Of the 5, this year's that we're going to talk about today is the only one that did not receive any Oscar nominations. It didn't end up going into the awards season by the end of the year.
That's true. In fact, Schatzberg is a lesser known of the New Hollywood acolytes. Before we get into the sections of the pod, Bill, give me your lasting impression of this roster of film en compétition.
Well, basically when I was a teenager and they used to send me to Greece for the whole summer and I couldn't sleep because of jet lag, I'd be up at 3 a.m. watching whatever was on one of the 3 channels that the country had to offer at the time. And most of the movies in this competition reminded me of the things I would find. Things that I did not know existed, that all of time had forgotten, except for whoever these programmers were that had 3 cents to throw at any American distributor who could give them content for that hour of the night.
And you didn't know if you were enjoying yourself, but you stuck it out because you still needed to figure out if you were into boobs.
Yeah, I was also fascinated.
Yeah.
There's a lot of movies in this competition where I'm like, I can't believe they made movies like this.
That they threw money at it, for sure. This is our second year from the 1970s now, and having done 20% of this decade, I do feel weary for when we come back to it. Last time we covered 1975, the year of the Chronicle of the Years of Fire.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Mohammed Lakhdar Amina.
Yeah, who died since we last recorded. That's right.
And just
at
like
the age
in that,
of like 95 or something. I mean, he did well.
And just like in that year, we have less than a handful of movies competing for the palm in our eyes, and at least twice as many competing for the damned.
Every time we come to the 70s, I feel like whatever's best in the competition is stuff I've already seen.
Right.
But I'm sure there are surprises in store. And there's a lot I'm really looking forward to watching again, so I'm not dreading the decade. But I have a feeling that experiences like Hospitals, The White Mafia is not the last of what I will do.
Bill, tell us about the festival. Tell us about 1973.
Greg, don't tell me what to do. Today we're talking about the 26th Cannes Film Festival. It ran from May 10th to May 25th of 1973, referred to by Molly Haskell as a slightly intestinal festival. This is a festival that often happens at Cannes. I don't know if it's often. It sometimes happens at Cannes, which is that there are movies that create a lot of furor, buzz, talk, and they aren't anywhere near the award winners. The films that were most talked about at Cannes in competition did not... one of them received a prize. One of them did not. And then there were actually fisticuffs over one of the films out of competition. Of course, the Le Grand Bouffe, The Big Feast, and The Mother and the Whore overshadowed the Palme winners. And for some people, it was felt that that was a deliberate choice on the part of the jury to go with safer choices. 1973 is a year that really puts the politically turbulent 70s in motion in many ways. We have the Treaty of Paris signed in January before this festival, which is the end of the Vietnam War, on paper at least. Picasso died a month before this festival, which is a big deal. And a few months after this festival, a little man named Pinochet is in power in Chile. And a month after that, the Yom Kippur War in Israel begins. So there's quite a lot going on. And we see a bit of this reflected as well when we do get to 1975. And, politics is an unmistakable part of the conversation about the movies playing in the festival. In 1973, we have 2 new non-competitive sections added. We have Études et Documents and Perspectives du Cinéma Français, which was started by the French Film Directors Society and ran until 1991. I don't know what happened with the other one. It was probably co-opted into one of the other series that we have now. We also have the creation of the Ciné Fondation, which is still going strong, which selects 15 to 20 short and medium-length films each year from film schools all around the world. They are presented to the Ciné Fondation and Shorts jury, which awards a prize to the best 3 at an official ceremony. Every year, more than 2,400 student films are sent to the Ciné Fondation, a testimony of the diversity and dynamism of the young international cinematographic creation. I sound like I'm promoting them. This is my TED Talk. Since 1998, more than 320 films from more than 100 schools in the world have been selected. At this festival, in attendance is the great Joseph Losey, who I can't wait till we get to his Palme d'Or. This is 2 years after he won. And he was probably there to enjoy the festival, but also to drum up funding for his next project. He wanted to make an adaptation of Proust. My notes did not say of specifically what. I'm assuming it's a portion or all of Remembrance of Things Past, because what else is there with Proust? And Mitterrand reproached him for trying to adapt Proust, and he said, how can you, an Anglo-Saxon, adapt one of our great writers? And Losey never did finish the project before he died. And, of course, our favorite section of the show, Isabel Watch. There's not much of an Isabel Watch because, as we discussed in 1975, 75 was the first time she was ever in competition. In 1973, she was in 4 TV movies. She made her feature debut the year before in Faustine et la Belle Été as student number 2. But what is somewhat significant this year, the jury prize is shared between 2 films, and one of them is by director Claude Goretta, who would come back to the festival in 1977 with a film called The Lace Maker, which is the film that made her career. It's the movie that made her a leading lady.
Or is this what we're going to do, like, in years before she's born? Like, we're going to do Isabel watch, she's being immaculately conceived?
1947. Isabel's parents met. No, it's not what we're going to do. Shut up, Greg.
And a quick
tell us about the other fucking competitions already.
Sure, Jan, sure. Here are other films that were exhibited in the 1973 Cannes Film Festival. Out of competition, we have Cries and Whispers, Visningar och Rop by Ingmar Bergman, which was originally released in 1972 and would go on to compete at the Academy Awards in the spring of 1974, when it would be nominated for 5 awards, including Best Picture, and would win Best Cinematography for Bergman's go-to DOP, the great Sven Nykvist, whose lush, color-saturated work is kind of the real star of the movie, if you think about it.
Yeah.
We have Day for Night, La Nuit Américaine by François Truffaut. This movie has a similar disjointed ride through awards because it's a 1973 movie. It wins the Foreign Language Film Award at the Oscars in 1974, but then competes in all the other categories in 1975, like director, screenwriter, supporting actress for Valentina.
Because the Foreign Film Award is based on when it's submitted by the country to the Academy.
Yeah.
The rest of the categories are based on when it plays in an LA theater. So I think that they've changed the eligibility dates for all of this stuff since, because it hasn't happened in a long time.
No.
But it happened a lot in the 60s that a foreign film nominee or winner was then nominated in other categories a year later. It happened with Amarcord. It happened with Marriage Italian Style. It happened with The Emigrants. So, yeah.
The movie was a huge hit in 73. It went on to be awarded Best Film and Best Director by both the National Society and the New York Film Critics.
And earned Truffaut his only Best Director nomination, too.
That's right. And, like, honestly, great one. This is not like it's his time. Like, it's one of his best works.
And I know it best because when I first heard of it, it was when Madonna was asked about working on Abel Ferrara's Dangerous Game and asked what it was about. She's like, it's a lot like Day for Night, if you've seen that, like a film within a film.
Bless her heart.
Yeah.
Also out of competition, we have Joseph Losey's adaptation of Henrik Ibsen's A Doll's House, starring Jane Fonda.
Which is also why he was there, I guess. I forgot to
Right.
Yeah.
Controversially, screening out of competition, we have The Holy Mountain by Alejandro Jodorowsky. This movie was made with money from John and Yoko Ono, and it was, at the time, the most expensive Mexican production, despite its actual cost being a small fraction of what it ended up.
Well, it's an incredible movie. I mean, it's so visually stunning, and he wanted George Harrison to play the lead. I think that's also why John and Yoko put their money in. But George didn't want to have his anus washed on screen, so it didn't work out.
There's nothing I want to see more than George Harrison's anus washed.
Although that guy, I don't know if I was just horny that day. I thought that guy who's in the movie is really sexy.
You're probably right. And we have Lady Sings the Blues by Sidney J. Furie, starring Diana Ross. It's a biopic about
Billie
Holiday.
I love him.
I have still not seen it. I've not seen Mahogany. I'm really behind on my Diana Ross on
She's
screen.
really good in it. She's another one. She doesn't look like her. She doesn't sound like her. But it is a good movie.
Another controversial movie that showed at Cannes, Swastika by Philippe Mora, a French-born Australian. The movie starts with a prologue that says, if the human features of Hitler are lacking in the image of him that is passed on to posterity, if he is dehumanized and shown only as a devil, any future Hitler may not be recognized simply because he is a human being. What you're about to see is authentic material shot in Nazi Germany. Scenes of Hitler's private life are from his personal films.
And people came to blows over this movie.
Yeah, that's a bit smug for a preamble, but like people were it really fucked people up that someone tried to show Hitler in mundane terms.
It's fascinating, especially when someone whose name has become synonymous with this level of evil that he perpetrated on the world. It is important to remember that he was a human being. Someone was talking to me about Harvey Weinstein and what a monster he was, and I said, I'm not a big fan of this monster talk, because a monster is not obligated to take part in humanity and be decent to other human beings. A monster is a monster. You have to remember that he's a person in order to properly assess the failings. And I think this is what this film does. But of course, it is very provocative, given that apparently there's no narration, so there's no leading of, and so when you see, I haven't watched it yet, and I wonder what version it is that you found on YouTube, because it was released in 2012 with 18 minutes missing from the Cannes version. This is after it had been banned in Germany until 2009. This movie was so provocative. But it includes like just color stock home movie footage that Ava Brown took of him playing with little kids in a garden. It's the zone of interest, basically. The banality of evil.
You mean it's non-musical Meet Me in St. Louis?
That's right.
We've got a movie about the 1972 Olympics, Visions of 8. This is the Olympics of Munich, where the Black September massacre took place. It's directed by 8 filmmakers, quite well-known ones mostly. Milos Forman, Claude Lelouch, Yuri Ozerov, May Zetterling, Kon Ichikawa, John Schlesinger, Arthur Penn, and someone named Michael Flager, who I looked him up, couldn't find anything. John Schlesinger is the only one who acknowledges the massacre happened.
Yes, it is interesting. Have you watched this documentary?
No, but now I'm interested because I just watched.
Well,
September
it's the follow-up to Tokyo Olympiad, right? Because they made films of every Olympics, and for whatever reason they decided to split it up among 8 different directors. But it's fascinating to watch because there is only one small section where it's like, oh, and this happened. You know what I mean? Like, for the most part, it plays like Tokyo Olympiad, where it's just like watching the athletics. And I understand that, you want to preserve the memory of the games themselves and what they represent. But like, this did happen, and it is a significant part of the, that Germany has its first major event after World War II that they are hosting the world at, partly in an effort to rehabilitate their historical image for the last 30 years.
And then Jews are killed at it.
And Jews are killed, yeah.
I know, sorry, awkward laughter. Like, it's just, the irony is just too deep.
Yeah.
In Critics Week, it's a parallel section. It's not run by Cannes themselves. It's put on by the French Syndicate of Cinema Critics. And it's meant to focus on first or second features of upcoming talents. In this year, Ganja and Hess by Bill Gunn had screened. It's a black horror film, and I don't mean like black comedy. I mean, it's a black made horror film.
Yeah.
It's often
it's like a zombie voodoo movie. It's
a vampire movie.
Oh, they're vampires, right?
Yeah.
It's been a while since I watched it, but yeah, it's fun.
And it's often grouped, just because curators are lazy, it's often grouped with blaxploitation, but it's actually trying to achieve more. And it was it famously remade into, well, I don't know how famously, The Blood of Jesus by Spike Lee.
Right.
In Director's Fortnight, I don't know if we've ever explained what Director's Fortnight is, so let's put it on record. It's a parallel section. It's not run by Cannes.
I believe it's one of the competitions that was created after the furor of 1968.
That's correct.
As an opportunity to get more than just like the canon in the competition.
It is meant to recognize the most singular forms of contemporary cinema.
And to highlight new directors or people on their way up.
That's right. And it recognizes works that attend to mise en scène and show a unique mode of artistic expression.
Yeah. And it's actually the quinzaine de réalisateur, so it's 15 days. A fortnight is only 14. So we have been duped.
Do you know who gets the 13th loaf in a baker's dozen? The devil.
Yeah.
I learned that from Trivial Pursuit.
Yeah, great.
Screening in Director's Fortnight, a little movie, you might have heard of it, called Aguirre, The Wrath of God, or Aguirre der Zorn Gottes by Werner Herzog from West Germany. Also screening in Director's Fortnight, we have Days of 36, or do I do this?
No. Meres tu trianda exi.
by Theodoros Angelopoulos. It was filmed during the Greek junta, the regime of the colonels, and it sounds really cool.
He's an interesting filmmaker. He's a visual poet and very challenging, but he's very good. And unfortunately, we're doing him next for his Palm, and that's not one of his best. But yeah,
it's his Scent of a Woman win.
Yes, yeah. And speaking of the junta, this can is taking place during the time that my sister, as a toddler, is trapped in Greece, far from her parents who are in North America.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's quite a story. I'll tell you about it sometime.
We have Senegalese classic Tuki Buki by Djibril Diop Mambeti. This movie is sometimes said to be one of the how many best movies of all time.
Yeah. A big favorite with Claire Denis, very influential on her work.
The Golden Bear at the Berlin Film Festival in this year went to Distant Thunder by Satyajit Ray. And I believe there was no Venice Film Festival in 1973.
They had a Biennale throughout the 70s, but there were no awards.
Oh, strange.
Yeah.
And
there were events during this time in Venice, but for some reason there was no official film festival with a jury and awards.
The Sting won Best Picture from the Academy Awards and from the National Board of Review. If you care at all about the National Board of Review, reminder, they gave Best Director and Best Film to Wicked last year.
Right?
And,
oh my God, I already blocked that out.
And the Golden Globes that year for Best Drama and Best Comedy went to The Exorcist and American Graffiti.
Right.
It's a cool year. Over to you, Bill. Tell us about the jury.
All right. Our jury president this year is none other than my mother, Ingrid Bergman. You know, my mother was at Cannes, and she was appalled by the films that she saw. Because, you know, my mother, she was born in 1915, and she comes from a different time. The great Ingrid Bergman is the president of the jury. There's some great interviews with her on French TV in her gorgeous blouses and slacks, looking pleasant and talking about how she's looking forward to watching the films and to see what will, you know, impress her, touch her, all that stuff. Films with meaning. Ingrid Bergman had a lot to say about the films she saw this year, and of course we'll get into it. She was particularly appalled by Le Grand Bouffe and The Mother and the Whore. And we lost her very young. Ingrid Bergman, this is 1973. Ingrid Bergman died in 1982. She was not that old. She was not even 70.
Of what?
And she had cancer. She had breast cancer, I believe.
Fuck.
She's already had major surgeries when she films Autumn Sonata. Have you seen that film?
Not yet.
Oh. She's already had, like, lymph nodes removed when she makes that movie. And there's no indication on screen that she's compromised in any way. And Liv Ullmann talked about filming that movie with her and how Ingmar Bergman, they're not related, he did not know that she had been treated for cancer and had surgeries and all that stuff. So he would ask her to do everything he would ask her to do, you know, takes for hours, lying on the floor, lifting her arms over her head, which is very hard for a woman who's had the kinds of surgeries that she's had. Ingrid never said a word, and she never complained, and she did everything and just powered through. So she was, you know, she was a pro. Of course, she was a star of Hollywood's golden age, became famous in the... I mean, she comes to Hollywood in the late 30s with Intermezzo because David O. Selznick had seen her in the Swedish version of that film, and he remade it with her and signed her to contract. She becomes a major star during the war years. She introduces a kind of subtle acting style, unlike other more mannered acting that was popular on screen at the time. She also refused to pluck her eyebrows and totally reversed the Marlene Dietrich 30s in the 1940s, and girls started letting their eyebrows go shaggy.
Oh, so would you say that she's an influence on Crawford? Because Crawford has Marlene Dietrich eyebrows in Grand Hotel.
She does, but she doesn't have... But she has... They're still, like, shaped. They're just stronger later on.
Yeah.
They're not natural. And I think that those ones are drawn in. By this time, Ingrid Bergman had 2 Academy Awards. One from 1944 for Gaslight, which we talked about in our episode on the first festival. One for Anastasia in 1956, which was significant for the fact that it came after a sex scandal that destroyed her career, saw her kicked out of the United States, discussed on the Senate floor as a moral menace to good American girls everywhere for the fact that she got pregnant with Roberto Rossellini's child when they were both married to other people. If you haven't seen the documentary Ingrid Bergman in her own words, it's very well worth seeing. And then, of course, a year after this, she wins a third Oscar and joins the very rare 3-Oscar club for Murder on the Orient Express over Valentina Cortese in Day for Night, who actually did deserve it, and Ingrid said so in her speech. And my favorite being that when she got up on stage, she said, "It's always nice to win an Academy Award." And we could talk about it for hours, so I won't. We have on this jury French actor and filmmaker Jean Delannoy. He directed Pastoral Symphony, which we talked about in 46 as well.
Oh,
starring
Bill,
Michel
Bill,
Margot.
hold on. I can't see you. Where are you, Bill? I'm looking right at you, but I swear to God, I'm blind.
Without the visual, that blind joke comes across a little insensitive, Greg. Cancel him. Don't cancel me. British writer Lawrence Durrell, born 1912, died 1990. Born in India to British colonial parents, most famous work is the Alexandria Quartet, published between 1957 and 1960. The best known of those is Justine, made into a film in 1969 with Anouk Aimée. He also wrote a lot of travel books and poetry. And as Kazuo Ishiguro said, the Cannes jury always likes to have at least one or two authors on there because it lends gravitas to the experience. We have Mexican politician and diplomat Rodolfo Echeverria, born 1946. At press time, he is still with us. He was from the Industrial Revolutionary Party, served in the Chamber of Deputies in Mexico 1973 to 6, 91 to 4, 2000 to 2003, Ambassador of Mexico to Cuba from 1982 to 1985, and to Spain from 94 to 98. This festival happens while he's in the Chamber of Deputies. We have Polish film critic Boleslav Michalek, 1925 to 1997, member of the Association of Polish Journalists, Wypreski. He wrote 9 books, 7 screenplays. His last one was Swan Song in 1988, appropriately.
Do you think you would ever just start spelling Bill with like that little cool cross across the L?
Bil. Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally will. And then make a fuss about it every time someone gets it wrong in a program.
It's Bill.
French journalist and writer François Nourricier, 1927 to 2011, Secretary General of Éditions de Noël in the 50s, editor of the review La Parisienne, advisor with the Éditions Grasset Paris publishing house, elected to the Académie Goncourt in 1977, and in 1970 he won the Prix Féminin for his book La Crève. Several of his novels have been made into films. So we have quite a few academically oriented writers on this jury. Film critic for the Turin newspaper La Stampa, Leo Pestelli, 1909 to 1976. He was a writer for La Stampa for almost 30 years and wrote a number of novels, nonfiction books, particularly with an interest as a scholar of the Italian language. And even he sat through Hospital of the White Mafia and was like, "What is this mierda?" Sidney Pollack, American filmmaker, 1934 to 2008, other than Ingrid Bergman, probably the best known on this list. Director, producer, Oscar winner, a great actor. People don't often talk about that enough. He was a great director, but he was such a wonderful actor. Him as Will's dad on Will and Grace is, he was so caustic and warm at the same time, I love him in Tootsie. I love him in Death Becomes Her. I love him in Michael Clayton.
I also like him in Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah. Deeply, deeply beloved by the actors who worked with him. Kate Winslet was very heartbroken when he died. I think just before or during the making of The Reader, which he was a producer on. He was a great filmmaker. Out of Africa, of course, is one of my favorite films. Tootsie is one of the greatest comedies ever made. He had some duds as well. He was also a great producer. Emma Thompson credits him with a lot of what led her to winning an Oscar for writing Sense and Sensibility. Because she said he asked all the right questions. He would say, like, why don't these women just get jobs? And she'd say, because you can't in this period. And he's like, well, you got to put that in the movie.
That's cool. He's a curious person.
Yeah, just lovely. In 1973, he would already be successful with They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, which got him his first Oscar nom. And he would have made, I think The Slender Thread is his, and then he would have just made Downhill Racer with Robert Redford. And this is the year of The Way We Were, which is great.
When does he do 3 Days of the Condor?
That's 73 as well. So I don't know if it's come out yet in May. I just watched that again recently. That movie's so good.
It is, but more importantly, it's so hot.
It's so hot, and Robert Redford is the only man I want to sleep with who looks better in clothes than out of them. Because, like, his body's great, but, like, the man can wear clothes, especially of that era, like the pea coats and the wide collars and the slope of those jeans and everything, with his shaggy hair and the perfect sunglasses. He just looked so beautiful dressed.
Wearing, like, that skin and that hair with the color blue.
Yes.
Yeah.
And lastly, Soviet author Robert Rozhdestvensky. Sorry, Robert. 1934 to 1994, Soviet-Russian poet, songwriter, broke with socialist realism in the 1950s during the Khrushchev thaw. First poems published 1950. Host of the documentary screen TV show in the 70s in Russia. What it must be like to host a documentary show on Russian television in the 70s. He was initially on the jury in 68, which is, of course, the cancelled festival. He came back and served on the jury in 1979. He translated the Olympic anthem at the Moscow Games in 1980, and he was awarded the USSR State Prize for the poem 210 Steps in 1979. And that is our jury.
A lot of intellectuals, one morally upright president. What will they pick?
Here we go. Greg, tell us about the competition.
In our official competition, first, let's start with our winners. In second place in 1973 is called the Grand Prix Spécial du Jury. Now it's just called the Grand Prix, now that the top prize is called the Palme d'Or again. And it went to La Maman et la Putain, or The Mother and the Whore, by Jean Eustache. The plot is aimless young Alexandre juggles his relationships with his girlfriend Marie and a casual lover named Veronica, who is Slavic, spells her name with a K. Marie becomes increasingly jealous of Alexandre's fling with Veronica, and as the trio continues their unsustainable affair, the emotional stakes get higher, leading to conflict and unhappiness. I'm not sure that's the movie
That's not
see.
The plot. The plot is smoking everywhere and talking.
The plot is three gorgeous people made to be on screen for 3.5 hours, chain smoking, and there's no chairs.
I think this movie is a miracle. I could talk about this movie for the rest of this episode. I could just talk about this movie. I had the great privilege of seeing this on the big screen many years ago, because for a long time this movie was only available. It had been on like a VHS that had gone out of print in the 80s. And then you would catch like the odd screening on 35mm at a art house theater. And I went to one somewhere in the 2000s with Dave, and it was at Jackman Hall. And when I think about my favorite era of movie going and the happiest years of my life, a lot of it is me and Dave at Jackman Hall, and I think of like 2 or 3 different movies that we saw there, and this is one of them. And it was 4 hours and no intermission, and I didn't need a break. And when it was over, we did, as we usually did, go to the Village Idiot across the street. And I was like, I need to try this whiskey and Coke concoction, because that's all she drinks throughout the whole movie. It made me so thirsty for it. And I've loved a rye and Diet Coke ever since. So, among the many other ways that this movie has been wonderfully influential, it is a film that in description feels so pretentious. It's 3 people talking in cafes and bedrooms for 3.5 hours, literally. Mm-hmm. But the actual effect of it is something that is so incredibly intimate and 3-dimensional, and it's almost a joke, the title, because that's the way he's treating them. But the movie makes it clear that that's not who they are, to themselves, to each other. Yeah. And it's a movie that takes the persona that Jean-Pierre Léaud had been putting on screen of this sort of lovable man-child in the Truffaut films, and lays it bare for something darker and more sinister, but not something that makes you hate him either. You actually love him more by facing his flaws and his shortcomings.
Yeah, I thought of something similar. It's a movie that props up feminism simply by showing how hard it is to live its tenets when the boys keep acting up.
Yeah.
And it's the first great movie to examine the man baby without overly explaining him.
And everything just feels so natural, but it also feels compelling. It does feel like great cinema, even though it feels like he's filming these people just doing what they're doing. And then you find out that none of it was improvised, which makes all of it incredible, particularly what's her name?
Veronica.
Yeah, her monologue at the end about
my God.
We're all whores, none of us are whores. That's incredible.
We're just dicks and we're just pussies and dicks.
It's so great. Michael Gebert calls this movie My Dinner with André, filmed on the scale of Lawrence of Arabia. And it's true.
That is true. I need to go back and look out for an extra in one of the scenes. André Téchiné is uncredited in this movie.
Oh, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. About it's widely recognized, this beautiful mundanity that is why the movie is so great. Eustache says, "My subject is the way in which important actions situate themselves in a continuum of innocuous ones. It's the description of the normal course of events without the schematic abbreviation of cinematographic dramatization."
Oh, that's cool.
It is cool.
It has unfortunately some like dark behind the scenes stuff. He based the character of Bernadette Lafont's character. He based on his girlfriend Catherine Garnier, who was actually a member of the crew of the film, who suffered from depression, and after seeing the movie, in seeing herself represented, was pushed further in her depression and committed suicide. Jean Eustache also committed suicide in 1981 at the age of 42. Having made 7 films and having reportedly never getting over her death. At the festival, this movie caused quite a stir. At the festival, a member of the press told him, "You used the word baiser 128 times in this movie," and asked him, "Are you obsessed with sex?" Baiser literally means kissing, but it's often used as fuck in French. I've heard it used as rape as well. And Eustache said to the journalist, "If you've gone to all the trouble to count how many times we use that word, I think it's you who's obsessed with sex." Yeah. He left the screening under threat of assault. Jeanne Moreau gave him her arm to support him. And as I mentioned earlier, Ingrid Bergman said that this and Le Grand Bouffe were the 2 of the most sordid films she's ever seen. I can get behind her feeling that way about Le Grand Bouffe, even though I don't feel that way about that film, because I can understand why she's put off by a level of imagery in that movie that was just not what an actress of the golden age would be used to. She loses points for me in being critical of this movie, even though I know that it is also a kind of cinema she's not used to. But this is a woman who worked with Roberto Rossellini and was punished for her own sordid sex life, even though it wasn't actually sordid. She was punished by sexual hypocrisy. I mean, it's just a classic case that happens a lot where people, they don't really learn from their own experiences, then they don't necessarily see themselves the way other people see them. But also, you should be celebrating this breakthrough in communication in this film. They're talking about, and I think one of the things that were turned her off was, they're talking about tampons. Her tampon's stuck in her. Can you help me get it out? Yeah. They're talking about fucking in this very banal way. It's not a sexy movie, even though there's a lot of sex in it. It's not meant to be sexy. They
suggest Leo, as soon as he puts on eyeliner, should take it up the ass for a change.
Correct, yeah. And I should say it is a sexy movie. It's not an intentionally, steamy movie.
Yeah.
And also they talk about abortion like it's something that people simply do, which is incredible given that abortion was really, really illegal in France for a very long time. I don't remember if the laws were abolished by this point, but as far as I know, into the 70s, if you even asked a doctor about it, you would go to jail. It was so incredible, which is why it's significant that Catherine Deneuve and all those other famous women signed that petition to say, we've actually had abortions, you need to change these laws now.
Wow.
So it's unfortunate that Ingrid Bergman felt this way about this film. And I imagine that the jury picked this film for second place because it's the prize that doesn't require her seal of approval.
Yeah, and historically it tends to go to films that are a bit more daring.
Yeah.
The zone of interest.
But it's so good. All these lengthy monologues that are never empty theorizing. You always feel these characters are tapping deeply into their emotional concerns, and he presents them with such rawness, but with such affection at the same time, and it never feels overt.
And you believe that they are people of their environments.
Yeah.
It was the first time in forever that I've seen people living like 20-somethings with a mattress on the floor and a full ashtray next to it and not been disgusted. I thought it was cool.
Because everything's on the floor in that apartment. The paintings, the plates, everything is on the floor. Everything is on the floor.
Like, I go back and watch Reality Bites and think, like, what the fuck was I thinking? Like, Ethan Hawke is so disgusting. Like, sucking on these big gulps and chain smoking with one button done up.
I know.
But everything in this movie looks perfect.
Yeah. It's also the beautiful, like, the charcoal-y cinematography. Which again was so gorgeous to discover this on the big screen. And then if you haven't seen this movie, you are in luck because it has been beautifully restored.
Gorgeously restored.
Much easier to find now and etc.
And to the point Bill makes, the 4K restoration is not giving it the masterpiece theater effect.
Yeah.
It looks like how it looked when it came out.
Yeah.
Winning the jury prize, we have 2 films. One is The Hourglass Sanatorium. Dare I try this? Sanatorium Pud Clepsydre by Wojciech Jerzy Haas. Here's a quick plot of it, if you can believe it has one. Joseph visits a dilapidated sanatorium to see his father. Joseph undertakes a strange journey through many rooms of the sanatorium, each which conjures worlds composed of his memories, dreams, and nightmares. I first watched this movie in a course, a seminar called Before and After the Holocaust. It has some recollections of his childhood growing up in his Hasidic Jewish neighborhood.
That's right.
And then there is allusions to the Holocaust and mass murder. It is heavily laden in psychoanalytic ideas, and it starts off gorgeous. I mean, gorgeous. And then it stays like that for a little too long. Yeah,
it's gorgeous throughout. It's an incredibly directed film. I mean, for the way that it feels like just like one take that continues. But it's also like one plot movement that continues. This movie is a real chore to get through. I slept through half of it and I didn't care. And I liked the last film of his that we did. He was here in '63 with How to Be Loved, which was a film that I did really like. The Cognac on the Plane film, if you recall.
I do recall.
This movie is based on the work of author Bruno Schulz, who was considered like the Polish Kafka, basically. He was murdered by the Gestapo for stepping outside his ghetto in Galicia for buying a loaf of bread, to go buy a loaf of bread. So we talked about this when we talked about Y'all, The Road, / Missing in 1982, which is that sometimes the political narrative has a lot to do with a movie being chosen. This is 1973. This is not long after the expulsion of Polish Jews from Poland in the late 60s. There was a very anti-Semitic, quote-unquote, anti-Zionist campaign, sound familiar? That saw a lot of Jewish Polish citizens being fired from a lot of high and low ranking jobs for their quote-unquote political beliefs, which led to the exodus of about 30,000 Polish Jews from Poland to other parts of the world.
Wow.
And this is something that the government didn't want anyone discussing. So they try to ban this movie. They tell him he's not allowed to bring it to the festival or to show it at all. And it's actually brought to Cannes in secret in film cans with false inscriptions on them and screened. And I think that the jury was particularly impressed by this feat of rebellion, and I think that energy carried them through this film a lot better than it does those of us watching it on DVD 50 plus years later. And then of course he got in trouble for it. He was not allowed to make a movie for the next 8 years.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is wild, but that doesn't change the fact that this movie is really hard to sit through. I find it really boring.
And I believe the poster design, the big eyeball on the skull, it's the same artist who did the poster for the 1975 Cannes Film Festival.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Also winning the jury prize, we have The Invitation, L'Invitation, by Claude Goretta. And Claude Goretta would be back here again in the next decade with The Lace Maker, which has just been mentioned, which put Isabelle Huppert on the map, or really helped her break through in 1977, and The Death of Mario Ricci from 1983. The Invitation. This movie is basically a hangover of the Sick Soul of Europe parties. After the death of his mother, a middle-aged insurance broker inherits her small cottage surrounded by a garden. Selling the cottage, which is situated on unexploited ground near the center of the big city, makes him a rich man, and he buys a big house in the countryside. He takes some time off and decides to throw a big garden party at the house and invite all his colleagues from the office. Aided by alcohol, the guests gradually lose all their inhibitions and reveal personality traits and frustrations that they normally keep hidden. This movie is just the last party scene of La Dolce Vita.
Right.
Not as good.
It's not as good. This movie actually represented Switzerland at the Oscars, too. It was nominated for Best Foreign Film, and it lost to Day for Night. It's probably a movie that seemed a lot better at the time. I feel like Europeans, French, it's a Swiss movie, but like French-speaking countries have made this movie many times since and have done it in tighter and more incisive ways. And we're kind of at a disadvantage to watch it now. But I do like this film. It leaves me with a nice feeling. There is a lot of French movies or French language movies made in the 70s that are this sort of, putting a bunch of people together in an innocuous situation and just watching them work it out. They usually have a stronger flavor, like Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie by Buñuel, or this movie is kind of like a less sexy Eric Romer film. A lot of his movies feel like this. But I kind of like the way that this movie doesn't try too hard. You could see something in the way that, things start happening at this party because people are drinking too much, and observing the different ways that people react to it is kind of like a microcosm of how we don't get along in the society because we're always telling everybody else what they should be doing. But I don't know if that's something that I thought about, but if you don't think that the movie's at all about that, I would get that. And then it just has this very beautiful visual palette, all these gorgeous solid colors, like the bright green of the grass and her yellow dress and the tiles. So I enjoyed watching this movie, and it left me with a good feeling, but I don't think it's great. I think it's interesting and passable. It's also, we have two movies this year where a Party City wig is actually in the plot of the film, as a character in the film. This is one of them, because I wrote down that her wig sucked at the beginning, and then it turned out to be a part of the actual story.
I just feel like by 1973, it's like this. It's all fun and games until someone whips out her tits. It just starts to lose its gas. That's all. But you're right. It's not boring.
No, and it just doesn't help that like come on, there are hot guys in France. You always have these movies where these girls look like Playboy bunnies, and the guy looks like
the lead from Shivers.
Yeah, or they look like the bookies in The Godfather. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Why do these people, and it's a part of French comedy as well, just like the sort of pathetic schlubby man chasing after a hot lady. It's very Benny Hill. It's also the era too, because this is the era where like men are balding and they're allowed to just comb 3 strands of hair across their bald head, and it looks way more pathetic than if they were just bald. Yeah.
And something got lost from the 50s because Jimmy Stewart's trick of keeping it long in the front and combing it back, it actually it kind of works like as an illusion.
And it doesn't help that everyone else does toupees like Belmondo, and they're bad.
You think Belmondo has bad toupees?
Yeah, he does. In the 70s, he does.
Oh, that's too bad. Winning Best Actor is Giancarlo Giannini for Love and Anarchy by Lina Wertmüller. Bill, do you want to do us the honor of pronouncing the Italian title?
Film d'amore e d'anarchia, ovvero, I'm not sure, stamattina alle 10 in Via dei Fiori nella nota casa di Torranza.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Set in fascist Italy before the outbreak of World War II, the story centers on Tunin, a farmer turned anarchist who stays in a brothel while preparing to kill Benito Mussolini. A delightful comedy that could turn twee because its main character is just doing a Jacques Tati type, but never does.
No, he's great.
And has
his freckles alone deserved the prize.
Totally.
Yeah.
He never feels like a lucky idiot. He doesn't seem like he's sleepwalking through the activities. He does seem like he still has convictions. And we're left curious, wondering how he ended up the way he did.
We're smack dab in the middle of this beautiful run of films of Wertmüller's in the 70s, beginning with Seduction of Mimi, and then this movie, and Swept Away, and Seven Beauties, which of course makes her the first Oscar-nominated female director, and the only one until 1994. And Seven Beauties is probably the best, but I really love this movie. I love its movement. I love its visuals. Most of them starred him and her, Mariangela Melato, the two of them together. They are the couple in Swept Away, which was then remade with his son and Madonna 30 years later. And yeah, I love this movie. I love Wertmuller. She's so funny. She's so naughty. A dedicated communist in real life who did not believe in prescriptive moralizing for all her political beliefs, and coming from an aristocratic family and then being very leftish, I'm sure that gave her quite a wide-ranging perspective, particularly on the fact that ideology is always flawed when given to humans and can never really cover it, basically, that there's always something wrong with trying to stick too hard to your ideology, because eventually we have to give in to human emotions.
The human element comes into play.
Yeah.
Some of the dialogue in the brothel, especially the dinner scenes, is outrageous.
Yeah. Especially
because they all have eyebrows like the Girly Show tour.
Totally. And he's just, because they're like gorgeously grotesque.
They are.
She of course, one of her earliest gigs was being Fellini's assistant, particularly on 8½, and she you could see that she still exists somewhat in his world in the way he presents these characters in these kind of garishly cartoonish ways. Yeah.
There's a circus-like quality to it.
Yeah. All these montage sequences, every time I think about this movie, I start singing that da 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 da. It's delightful to be married, to be married, which is Louisa Reiner's song from The Great Ziegfeld.
Winning Best Actress, Joanne Woodward for the effect of gamma rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds by her husband, Paul Newman, from 1972. A fantastic performance that did not get much recognition by year's end on
because it's from the previous year in North America.
That's right.
Yeah, and she does get an Oscar nomination in 73, but for Summer Wishes, Winter Dreams.
She got a Golden Globe nomination for this movie, but nothing else. And it's shocking because this is a stunning performance and also a competently adapted movie. This doesn't feel like a play put in front of a camera.
No, and I think it's because they change it quite a bit, because the play is more about the little girl, from what I understand when I was reading up on it. The play won a Pulitzer Prize, and they make the focus of the movie the mother for obvious reasons. I'm fascinated by the choices Paul Newman made as a director. He doesn't make the directors he doesn't choose the projects that you expect a movie star turned director to make. He made a lot of these very small, female-driven tone poems that he made. Rachel, this one, he comes back to the festival with The Glass Menagerie, usually starring Joanne. He also directed Sometimes a Great Notion, which is a really good movie, although he didn't choose to direct that. He was kind of forced to when the original director dropped out at the last minute. I really enjoy this movie. Joanne Woodward is one of the few Hollywood stars, glamorous, talented, Oscar-winning actors who has zero compunctions about deglamorizing herself to play dowdy women.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like not even Diane Ladd.
Flat. Totally. She will let her hair go as flat as it needs to get. And she will make herself as unpleasant as she needs to. She is a very dedicated actress. In part because she was kind of over the Hollywood game at this point. She always said that she was lucky that she won an Oscar. I mean, she felt lucky that she won it all, but she's like, I'm also really glad it happened when I was so young, because I was raised on movie magazines, and it was all just like the life of a princess to me at that point. And there's just a lot I learned about the business and acting and making movies that came later on that jaded me a little bit, and I'm glad it happened when it did, basically. So this is the era that we're catching her in at this point, where she just cares about doing good work. And she's extraordinary in this film. I like this movie a lot. There's a lot of small, intentionally unpleasant character pieces in the 70s, and I find this one to be one of the easiest to sit through.
Yes.
Her character is fascinating. She's clearly traumatized in some way, in ways that we are never told, and I appreciate how subtle that is. Also, that's her real-life daughter, with Paul playing the younger daughter. Nell Potts is her name as an actress, and she's incredible in this movie. And then it's Eli Wallach's daughter playing their older daughter, who has plenty of problems of her own.
it never feels looky-loo or like poverty tourism.
Yes.
You can throw all the furniture on the front lawn really easily, and it can look or obvious. And this is it felt cared for.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't even know what else to say about this movie. I think it's just lovely and touching. I was very deeply moved by the little girl's monologue at the end. I was fascinated by the fact that this woman can smoke in anybody's face without fear.
Yeah.
And it's the other Party City Wig character.
That's right.
Yeah.
And she kind of reminds me of my Grandma Kay. Gotta point that out.
Yeah, well, she probably also had stuff to get over in her life, you know?
Yeah, no doubt about that. There was a special award given, I'm guessing, for animation achievement to La Planète Sauvage, Fantastic Planet by Rene Laloux.
Mm-hmm.
A movie that is made for stoners. Its marketing caption is "A sublime trip to a fine new world."
Yeah.
Here is the plot. On the planet Egam, the Drogs, extremely technologically and spiritually advanced blue humanoids, consider the tiny Ohms, human being descendants of Terra's inhabitants, as ignorant animals. I wrote that down weird. They're treated as ignorant animals. Those who live in slavery are treated as simple pets and used to entertain drug children. Those who live hidden in the hostile wilderness of the
and dressed
planet,
as like in pedophile drag, by the way, like
completely. Those who live hidden in the hostile wilderness of the planet are periodically hunted and ruthlessly slaughtered as if they were vermin.
Yeah.
The movie.
What's it about?
It's about why we should all be vegetarians.
Yeah.
It's animated in the style of Monty Python meets...
Yes, and that's so ugly. It upsets me.
Yeah, it's Monty Python meets The Yellow Submarine. Although, don't get me wrong, The Yellow Submarine is 100 times more interesting.
I still haven't seen it. It's sitting on my shelf and I've never watched it. If you took the 70s, like the most groovy aspect of the look of the 70s, turned it into anal beads and shoved it up my ass, that's this movie. That's this movie.
And the sad thing is, it's the third time I've watched it.
Same.
I have a penchant for punishment, for self-punishment.
I guess so, but I don't really like this movie. I find it, it is laid a bit too plain, and I don't find the look attractive in any way. Although I will say, it does take you somewhere. Like, you do feel like you go to another world in it. There's something effective about the look of it, even though I don't like it. But there are a lot of cult movies that I don't like where if you said this is playing on Friday at midnight, let's go and, be with all the other losers and get high and whatever, I'd be up for it. And this is not one of them. I wouldn't do it.
I think I could watch a Terry Gilliam movie before this again.
This is a Terry Gilliam movie. That's kind of why I don't like it.
Those are our winners. In 1973, no awards were given for screenplay or director. Now on to the other movies in the competition. First, I should mention the ones we did not watch, just to get those out of the way. The first one is Monologue by Ilya Averbach. We were not able to source this. No, we did. We found a YouTube video of it, but it did not have auto-translate or subtitles. La Autre Imagine by Anthony Ribas. Pétufi 73 by Ferenc Kardos.
Which looked good. I was really sorry I couldn't find it.
And also on YouTube, but not translatable yet. We Want the Colonels by Mario Monicelli. On to the movies we did watch. The other also rans. Returning to the festival, we have Carlos Saura with Ana and the Wolves. Ana y los Lobos. We've talked about him on this podcast before with El Dorado. We are still looking for a copy of The Descendants, which I believe is from 1960. And he's been here many times. I think he had the record at one point for the most appearances in competition. Los Golfos in 1960. La Prima Angelica from 1974. Cria Cuervos from 1976. Elisa My Life from 77. And so on and so on. This movie is about a young governess who who goes to nanny some children, except she doesn't end up with Christopher Plummer. She ends up being hit on by 3 incel brothers.
And never takes care of those kids, by the way.
Yeah, the kids are kind of a flashpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah, the movie, it's basically about how she tries to navigate the dynamics of a dysfunctional family, and then it ends with a really, really shocking ending that kind of breaks the comedic satirical tone.
And is the actual Party City Shake and Go wig award, because they have to put a wig on her for the part where she gets her hair cut off, and it clearly switches to like her skull suddenly gets like 3 times larger.
She becomes the mannequin from Butchered.
Yeah.
Oh god. It kept my attention for a really long time. I was constantly thinking this is not good, but I'm not bored.
Because it looks great.
It does. It is like it's him at the peak of his powers as a director. It's just not an interesting story. The levitation scene looks cool. I find all of the prurient, like all the innuendo, like compelling. I just wish it went somewhere, but it kept my attention.
Yeah, I found this movie tiresome to sit through as well. It's it does look great, and it is interesting at the beginning, and then it never really goes anywhere. And it is a movie that also lays its ideas a bit too barely. You know, there's the 3 brothers. One of them is clearly religion. One of them is clearly sex. The other one is clearly politics/military. They represent these things. They're her dealing with these things. And the one thing that's impressive is that Saura is making movies, anti-Franco movies, before Franco dies. Franco doesn't die till 75.
How does he not get persecuted for them?
Well, I think by the 70s that you have I don't think you have as strong a regime as you had after the Civil War. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe he was persecuted for it, and I don't know enough about it. Or did he tell his stories in a covered up enough way that it would? I don't really know, and I don't really care.
Let's just put it this way: like we're still wondering why Jafar Panahi's not been killed yet.
Right. And it doesn't help. Geraldine Chaplin is the lead. She is his partner at this time, which is why she's in his films. I love listening to her speak Spanish. I love her accent. And I am fascinated by her. I think she's great. But she's not someone who ever really lets us in. And this story is about her experiencing these people. And I never get that experience because she's not a sensitive actress, despite being a very talented one. So that by the end, her denouement in the last scene feels symbolic and a lecture. It doesn't feel like something that I was invested in any way.
I can see that. It never goes anywhere emotionally. Also in competition, we have my Dand winner from 1988, André Delvaux with Belle. A simple little movie about a married, middle-aged professor who meets a mysterious woman in the woods and has an affair with her. She provides him distraction and excitement while he is disaffected from his wife and child. It's American Beauty of the Flora. I mean, it's just what that plot said it is, and it's pretty straightforward and uninteresting. Not wretched.
Yeah, this movie is not torture to sit through, but it's the kind of Euro trash that I'm catching at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep in Europe. Like, it's, passable. That guy is the guy from The Invitation as well. It's the same guy.
Oh, wow.
And that woman is so beautiful.
Right.
Yeah. You also didn't point out, he doesn't just take up with another woman. He takes up with a woman that he finds living in a shack in the woods.
That's true. She's a mysterious woman who, for reasons,
and it turns out she's like the partner of an escaped fugitive from the law, right? And then he ends up getting caught up in that a bit.
Yeah, although not very dramatically. You think there's going to be a real conflict. There isn't.
Well, and there's not much of anything. I mean, is there a story being told here about this like sort of erudite urban academic who gives into this passion for this woman he can't even speak to, who is rustic, and there's not much happening beyond the surface level. I didn't suffer to sit through it, but it's a real who cares of a situation.
I liked it more than my other outing with him, and we have one more with him. He has a movie from 1979. You did not write the English title down. Thank you.
No, because the source I was looking at only had the foreign one, and I didn't feel like looking it up because I have a busy life, Greg. Move on.
Sure. From Quebec, we have Gilles Carle with The Death of a Lumberjack. Carle will be back again with Fantastica in 1980. He'd been here just a year before with La Vraie Nature de Bernadette. The plot is this meditative French-Canadian film tells the story of a young woman's search for the father she has never known. Marie Chapdelaine grew up in a remote area of Quebec without ever knowing her father, a lumberjack. She moves to Montreal, settles in there with a job as a topless dancer, and begins her search for him. Eventually, with the help of his former mistress, they find the lumber camp he was working in, only to discover that he was killed in a labor dispute.
That's like a giveaway of the... like, you can do spoilers on this show, but, like, that plot description you're looking at is, like,
It's
a
the
spoiler.
whole fucking movie.
Yeah.
I'm just reading off of Letterboxd. This movie held my attention, and then all of a sudden... my brain turned to mush.
It goes on a bit too long. It's another one that feels like a bit of a chore. It looks really great. It's been restored, so it looks particularly great. I love Carle who's in this.
So much.
She becomes famous in the 70s. She's in the Oscar-winning French movie Get Out Your Handkerchiefs. And many other things. And she has the Order of Canada as well. She has a very, very beautiful body that makes heterosexuality make perfect sense.
You
could stare at her naked for hours and not get bored.
Well, we need to talk about François Lebrun in The Mother and the Whore. She also looks fantastic.
Yeah.
They say she's the face of the French New Wave. She's also the body of the French New Wave.
This movie also, her character is named Marie Chapdelaine, which people keep remarking on because, of course, Maria Chapdelaine is the... it's basically like the Gone with the Wind of Quebec literature. It's a very popular... Yeah, it would be like meeting a woman named Anna Karenina.
Okay.
And and then years later, Gilles Carle made an adaptation of that novel, Marie Chapdelaine, with Carle about 10 years after this. I appreciated a lot of what this movie's going for, but it's another one where it's just like, we know what you're talking about. You know, when she's posing with all the butchered meat and the symbolism of that.
Yep.
And it really does feel like two movies shoved in together, like the Adventure to the City and all of that, where she's not just a topless dancer, she's like a topless country western singer in the shittiest bar you ever saw.
Then moonlights as a model for the photographer from Blow Up.
Right, and gets exploited by him. And then we go to the lumber camp where like all of that is left behind, and then it's all about this discovering a murder and the labor dispute and all that stuff. And again, I didn't struggle to get through it, but it felt longer than it was.
Well, and I didn't really care about her dead dad.
Yeah, I didn't care at all. And I didn't find that the revelations of the mystery were interesting enough to justify all the trouble we went through for it. I love that woman who played her father's girlfriend, though.
Well, I want to ask you, on the subject of Party City, who wore it better? Her or Shelley Winters in Cleopatra Jones?
Without a doubt. Yeah, no, it was her.
Yeah. We've got a little B movie in here, or at least I would call it that. Or it feels like something of like the Roger Corman, like American International Pictures ilk.
Yes.
Electra Glide in Blue by James William Guercio.
Maybe Guercio.
Yep. He's a good cop on a big bike on a bad road. A short Arizona... How would I say that? Arizona... a short Arizona motorcycle cop gets his wish and is promoted to homicide following the mysterious murder of a hermit. He's forced to confront his illusions about himself and those around him in order to solve the case, eventually returning to solitude in the desert. That's a bit lean. The movie is also about him being caught between his sense of duty as a police officer and his not feelings of identification with the hippie movement, but sympathy for hippies, which eventually comes back to bite him in the ass.
Yeah, because they are particularly targets of these fascist cops throughout this film. I find it interesting that this movie was intensely disliked at Cannes by the critics for being intensely disliked. And it was interpreted by people at the Cannes reception as being a fascist film, even though I find this film's very ACAB. I mean, the cops are all psychopaths or losers. Like, no one can do their job properly.
Correct.
And it's all about how inappropriately they mete out their violent duties. And so I don't know what was going on through people's minds at the time and how the perspective was. But to me, this feels very much a very pro-ACAB movie. Mm-hmm. It's another one that's also, it's not that interesting, even though it has a really interesting plot. I love the fact that, like, they find this dead person who everyone sure has committed suicide, but he just has an inkling of a notion that he was murdered instead. And it turns out from examining one bullet hole that they realize that he actually was murdered. And so the big detective takes him on as a partner, even though he really takes him on as a driver. So he gets his dream come true to be promoted to detective, but he's being treated as a servant the entire time. So this whole movie is all about the illusions of achieving the virtuous aims of your life and the world that you want to be in. Also fascinating about this movie, it is directed by the manager for the band Chicago.
If you leave me now, you take away the biggest part of me.
Which is why Peter Cetera's in it, which is why members of the band Chicago are in it. Yeah. What's the other famous song? I used to play on the piano. You're the meaning in my life. You're the inspiration.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I always get them confused with Air Supply, and I remember a girl on Much Music saying Air Supply is the soundtrack to stupid people's lives, and Chicago feels a little bit like that to me too. It's an era, for sure.
Chicago sounds like how a Werther's tastes. You know what I mean?
It's amazing. It's amazing. It also doesn't help that we have Robert Blake in the lead in this movie. He's so ugly and he's not interesting. You can't find a way in with that guy.
Yeah.
So that doesn't. And of course, he's now more famous for a murder trial than he is for his film career in any way.
Yeah. But, I mean, my generation of cineasts would know him best for being the creepy guy from Lost Highway.
Yes, and then of course, In Cold Blood is another big one on his resume.
But he was a child actor.
Yes, he was. He was in The Little Rascals, but he was not Alfalfa, as many people believe. The one thing I will say about as a takeaway from this movie, that closing shot with the music and the panning back for hours and hours on the highway, that was actually incredible. And that
Conrad
really did
L.
blow
Hall.
my mind. Yes.
Yeah.
But that shot really did blow my mind. Like for the first time, because the whole thing is like, it's like Thelma and Louise is happening to the left, and I'm like, why am I not watching the movie that I want to watch? But that last shot, I was like, oh my god, that was amazing. And I could see how people would be so blown away by it, but they'd forget that the rest of it was not terrible, but kind of mediocre and a bit overstated.
Yeah, the photography kept my attention the whole time. It was like a gorgeous husk.
It does look great. Yeah.
For listeners, Conrad L. Hall is the winner of 2 Academy Awards, one for American Beauty. No, 3. One for American Beauty, one for Road to Perdition.
Yeah, which he won posthumously.
And one for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
That's right.
The movie I have seen the most in competition because I grew up raised by Catholic hippies.
Oh, wow. I did not know this. Oh, my God. I finally have sympathy for you for the first time in our entire friendship.
Is Godspell, a musical based on the Gospel according to St. Matthew by David Greene, with music and lyrics by Stephen Schwartz, who we now know for Wicked.
And The Prince of Egypt.
That's right.
He won an Oscar for that.
When you believe the
Many
Gospel.
nights we prayed. Na, 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 na. We were moving mountains long before we knew we could. Mm-hmm.
The Gospel according to today.
Yeah.
In modern day New York City, John the Baptist calls out to a group of young men and women to learn from the teachings of Jesus. Through song and dance, they relive Christ's crucifixion.
Jesus is wearing clown shoes in this movie, and the moment he showed up, I wanted to punch someone in the face. This is twinky young Victor Garber in this movie, who is one of our greats, a Canadian actor. The cast of this movie is taken from various stage casts of this play. LA, New York. He's the only one from the Toronto production who is cast and in the lead. He's very young and he's very physically awkward. He looks so uncomfortable skipping. Like he just does not know how to be on camera yet in this movie. And he's dressed like Ronald McDonald, which just made me want to set the whole thing on fire. Some of the songs are really pretty. Stephen Schwartz is a lovely composer. This is his first show, his first major show. And he actually was hired. They had a whole slate of other songs that were written for this project of a hippie Gospel of Matthew. And then they hired him to write new ones for everything. And the only one they kept from the previous version is By My Side. which is actually the song that I always knew because I was in a staged reading of a Terrence McNally play 20-something years ago where they hired me because I could sing, and I had to sing that song a cappella. And I'd never seen Godspell, so I had to learn it. Where are you going? Where are you going?
Won't you take me with you?
And every time in Pygmalion rehearsal, when she says, you cannot take a girl up like a pebble on the beach, I always say, I shall call the pebble dare.
I shall call the pebble dare. And once we all have had enough.
The Toronto cast was Andrea Martin, Gilda Radner, Eugene Levy, Jane Eastwood, whose daughter I have met, Martin Short. In London, Jeremy Irons played John the Baptist, so that part always goes to like a rangy, hot white guy.
Also, Judas, the same guy actually plays Judas, and I've never seen Jesus Christ Superstar, but I trust the take that someone who's seen many more musicals than me told me. Judas is always hot in any movie about Jesus.
Yeah, and that's another trivia, is that musical. This and Jesus Christ Superstar debuted on stage in New York in 1971, although Godspell doesn't go to Broadway until much later. And the film versions of both came out in 1973. I like Jesus Christ Superstar way, way, way more, even though the aims of each project are different. And this movie is also produced by Angela Lansbury's brother, who produced the play. It's the first film to have its premiere at Lincoln Center, the newly built Lincoln Center, and a massive screen had to be brought into Philharmonic Hall for that premiere, which is now the David Geffen Hall. Ingrid Bergman attended that premiere, which means she had to watch this movie twice. And this, I don't know if you saw the footage of the opening night of Cannes in 73, but this is the opening night film as well. So you see Victor Garber in a tux and all the actors and the director and everything.
Oh, when he has the tux, does he have a cane? Because then you can do all for the best.
No, but he's got don't at me, everyone. He's got what my friends call a Jufro going on with that big hair. I don't like this movie. I think some of the songs are pretty, but it's so dated and so twee. If I had seen it as a kid, I probably would have more affection for it. It does have some impressive visual moments. I mean, the conceit of this film is that they are completely alone in Manhattan until the very end of the movie, and that is effectively achieved.
Yes.
Which is an impressive thing to do in Manhattan. And some of these shots, like plummeting off of the World Trade Center,
yes,
are incredible. But like, oh my God, tell me when it's over.
Yeah, it too many times it becomes like like clowns at a children's festival. Like I would appreciate that, and like I have an affection for it because I grew up with it. But here's a quote from Megan, my drama teacher, who listens to our pod. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Megan.
Whenever I see Godspell, I just think I'd be so embarrassed to do this show. It's like being asked to act like a dog, and I say this as someone who played the sour kangaroo in Seussical the musical.
No, that's absolutely true. It also represents the aspect of like 70s hippiedom that I find the most annoying, which is that like if we were all just nice to each other, the world would be a perfect place. And then those people who acted this way are the ones who became like the soulless yuppies in the 80s. So anyway, it's really fucking annoying. I was always curious to watch this movie. I'm glad I watched it. So yeah.
You are the salt of the earth. But here's another thing, Bill. If that salt has lost its flavor, it ain't got much in its favor.
Yeah, you ready to move on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next on our list, we have La Grande Bouffe, the Great Feast, the Big Feast by Marco Ferreri. Ferreri had been here with The Conjugal Bed in 1963.
Which we couldn't find.
We could not find. We want to watch it because we're completists and because it won an award that year.
Yep.
He was back with The Ape Woman in 64. Back again with his similarly notorious Dillinger is Dead in 69. Is it good?
I'll tell you in a second. Go on. Yeah.
After this Cannes competition, he'd be back again with Ciao Maschio in 1978.
Maschio.
The story... Oh, Maschio?
Means masculine.
The Story of Piera in 1983.
Which is the movie where Isabelle Huppert fucks both of her parents.
Fucking right she does, because that is how she rolls.
Yes.
I Love You in 1986 and The Flesh in 1991. We've already heard about what Ingrid Bergman thought about the movie. It's the reason why Molly Haskell called this festival a slightly intestinal festival. And someone named Jean Cao from Paris Match said about it, it's hell and it's garbage. it's boredom, and it's the toilet. Which is kind of like saying the triangle of sadness is the toilet. Like there's a little toilet in it. You can't call it the thing that it features.
Yeah,
It's a movie that features somebody shitting themselves to death.
Yep.
This movie is quite literally about four well-to-do men with cool jobs who have a getaway venture to a mansion. I forget how they procure the mansion or rent it, who owns it.
It's Philippe Noiret's family abode.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And their objective is to rent a bunch of hookers and eat themselves to death.
Yeah. Well, actually, their objective is to just go and eat themselves to death. And then when they get there, Marcello says, I'm horny. Let's also get hookers.
Right. This movie features 3 Cannes Best Actor winners, Michel Piccoli, Philippe Noiret, and 2-time winner...
Philippe Noiret.
Pardon me?
Ugo Tognazzi. Philippe Noiret has Best Actor.
Ugo Tognazzi, not Philippe Noiret.
Yeah.
And 2 times for Marcello Mastroianni. Part of the movie's infamy and its marketing, really, is that it's these dignified like elites of European cinema acting a fool, basically, but also doing it in the name of eating the rich. Haha. This movie is, I thought, really, really entertaining. And I know I'm going to contradict myself because I just bitched about The Invitation being this like last dry heave of the Sixth Soul of Europe parties. This movie just gets away with it because it's funny. Like it never stops being it never becomes boring. It keeps things moving along and interesting. I know that makes it only as good as like Idiocracy or Dogma, but I was still thoroughly entertained and I loved all the fart sounds.
I'm surprised to hear... Well, I guess I'm not that surprised to hear it. We can't agree on everything. I don't feel in any way emotional about the fact that I do not feel this way about this movie. I think that's interesting. Because I think that this movie has a really cool setup. I love how provocative it is. There is still aspects of it that are shocking, even though the imagery isn't. Like, we don't really go past boobs and a few asses in terms of what we see. Mm-hmm. But there is a sense of excess to it that I still find shocking and off-putting. Like, that food looks gross and they are eating too much of it. And I say this as someone who has a problem with eating too much.
The cake made out of pate is particularly...
No, we can't do that. But I also find that Ferreri is really, really good at setting up a very dynamic and catchy situation and then doesn't really do much with it.
Fair.
These guys don't learn anything. They don't experience anything. They don't, have a long night of the soul. They don't develop in their relationships in any way. They are at the end where they were at the beginning. That might be the point. But given that it's 130 minutes, that's a lot to sit through without much happening. My favorite performance is an actress who I've always adored, who is not celebrated from this era nearly as much as she should be, which is Andrea Ferreri as the school teacher, who's up for everything and really really challenges the professional sex workers for how far she's willing to go. She gained 50 pounds for this movie, and it just makes her more delicious than she already was. And she's just wonderful. You have to see her in A Z in Two Knots by Greenaway. You have to see her in The Last Metro by Truffaut. Wonderful, wonderful actress. So
and she's beautiful. Just throwing that freshly new ass all over this food.
Totally. I don't know. I never really found it all that funny, but I don't know. I could see why it made the splash that it did. But this many years later, where it's no longer nearly as provocative as it was then, it does feel a lot more tiresome. And it was provocative. A pro-censorship campaigner named Mary Whitehouse, which is the name of a spinster if ever there was one.
Well, and a Klansman.
Yeah, in the UK, brought prosecution against this film under the Vagrancy Act when it showed at the Curzon Cinema in Mayfair in London, saying that the cinema's owners were keeping a disorderly house. She issued statements to the press about what she found objectionable in the film, which, by the way, means she sat through it and wrote shit down. You hate me, but you're a little obsessed with me. She described the movie in details that many felt were more descriptive than what is actually in the movie. And then the case was thrown out, and it actually inspired censor James Furman to extend the Obscene Publications Act to cover films in order to prevent movies with artistic merriment to suffer prosecution and be treated as pornography, basically. So this movie really made quite a splash for a movie that I find no one's watching or talking about today. It's quite interesting.
And I guess I'm kind of shocked that nobody is, because it really is like state of the art in fart jokes. The farts sound incredible.
They did actually, because they sound like the ones you have when you are like so blocked that you're having heart attack symptoms, and then one thing happens that releases that pressure valve. And even if people are around you, like, I'm sorry, this had to happen. I just met God.
It's true. It's just like some of their shits sound like they just broke a bowel obstruction.
Yeah. Also, I would venture to say that all the movies in this festival are movies that are completely forgotten today, whether they are celebrated or not, other than The Mother and the Whore.
You're completely correct.
And that one was forgotten for a long time.
Scarecrow is having its run around the independent theaters of LA. Like, I think it's getting a sorcerer treatment, but not nearly as much. Next on our list, a special movie I watched in an airport: Hospitals, The White Mafia, or Bisturi, La Mafia Bianca, by Luigi
Which means
Zampa.
Scalpel, and some people have it listed as Scalpel, the title.
This movie wins Best Movie Poster of all of them, by far. It looks like a Michael Crichton book. In fact, the movie has a Michael Crichton plot. It's kind of used like Disclosure.
Yeah.
A famous surgeon...
And I'm sorry, I was talking at the same time as you, and I covered you. You say the director's name again.
The director's name is Luigi Zampa. Yeah. Do we pronounce it as a Z or an S in Italian?
I believe it's Zampa. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as a Z.
A famous surgeon earns enormous amounts of money by speculating on patients, although he is generally considered a great man and an excellent doctor. Only one of his colleagues rebels against the situation and tries to reveal the truth. But during a dramatic operation, the famous surgeon forces him to turn accomplice, and the doctor must keep quiet. Not for long, however. That sounds way more dramatic than the movie actually is.
Yeah, and there's also like 12 operations in this movie, and every single one is like, what, oh shit, she's dead.
What this movie really is, oh my god.
They keep killing people as if they're accidentally spilling paint onto their canvas.
They keep taking off their gloves, throwing them down on the surgical table right next to the body, saying things like, "This damn bladder has too many stones."
Bitch, they're smoking in that hospital. He lights up a cigarette every time he walks out of the operating room.
It's a hospital movie made by Aaron Spelling.
Not even. That would be way more entertaining than what we've got here.
Oh, but I thought this was so entertaining.
The problem with this movie is that I appreciate that it is supposed to be this excoriating critique of the state of the Italian healthcare system in the 70s. You know, Italian society is up in arms in the anni piambi, as they're called in this era of political turmoil. And we are currently living during a time where we're having to deal with the shortcomings, and no offense to someone who is married to a doctor, but like the shortcomings of the current healthcare system, which I'm sure he would also have things to tell me about.
Oh, yes, he would.
So I could relate to it on that front. The problem is the movie doesn't really have anything other than this commentary. These characters are not interesting. The story is not interesting. It's not particularly dramatic. The most that we have is that this main character, played by the guy from La Ventura and On Her Majesty's Secret Service, is a shitty doctor who is bilking the system for all it's worth for his own gain, and then in the end gets a deadly disease and realizes that none of us are invulnerable to what real life has to hand you, and that the doctor has become the patient, the master has become the servant. Big deal. It's the most Eurotrash of these, like, shitty late-night movies.
But I had the pleasure, because I don't pay attention to
my emails and my instructions and my links, yes.
Yeah, exactly. I had the pleasure of finding it on my own on YouTube with English dub, which made the whole thing sound like Troy McClure, and it was really enjoyable.
Which is incredible, because this movie is on YouTube in this impressive upload that is excellent picture quality and gives you the choice of like 3 different audio tracks and multiple subtitle tracks. Like, if only we had that for every film that we do on this show.
I might rewatch it. Like, this is like this is one of those like dump midnight movies at your local indie theater.
Well, I mean, it is hilarious. Those nuns who work at the hospital all look like Playboy models in a fetish photo shoot. Well, they look like they're just going to whip off their glasses and take the wimple off, and their blonde hair will fall down, and then everything gets hazy and looks like a 70s perfume ad, and then whip out their tits.
It's the Hot for Teacher video.
Yes.
On to our next movie. Oof. We have Jeremy by possibly by Arthur Barron.
Yep.
This movie won Best First Work.
Yeah, which is now the camera door.
Yes. We'll get to the whose first work it is in just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
The movie's caption is, "It's about the first time you fall in love." Jeremy is learning cello at an art school in New York. At school, he spots Susan, who practices for a ballet audition, and he falls in love. It's about young love. It's about a short fling, a short season of love. It has a score completely of flute, and it's accompanied by a cast of adults who just don't understand these kids.
I know. This movie is so lame, but it's also so sweet. It's so sincere. It means well. It's all about just like it pays tribute to how ridiculous we were at that age when we thought everything was so dramatic and important. Although it does really, push the limit of sense when she's like, my dad just told me we're moving back to wherever, Detroit, where were they from? Maryland. And we're leaving in 2 days. Like, no one does that when they're changing cities, but, other than that, it is a very sweet, well-intentioned film with a very early performance by, I believe, 15-year-old Robbie Benson, who later became a teen heartthrob in the 70s and 80s. And then I think he's in that one where, I think he's in Ice Castles or the other one. I always get him mixed up. And then, of course, he's most famous for being the voice of the Beast in Disney's Beauty and the Beast. Belle, it's me.
As we talked about in our 1946 episode, is hotter than when he turns into a human being.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the controversies that accompanied this movie.
Yes. So Arthur Barron was actually a Columbia film professor who had made a couple of documentaries. He gets writer-director credit on this film. He won the Best First Film Award, but Joseph Brooks claimed, after it won this award, he said, "No, I directed this movie. I directed most of it." And investigating this does seem to bear proof that he did. He's credited in the film as writing the songs. And what it turns out is basically that Joseph Brooks filmed this movie for 6 to 7 weeks of its overall 2-month shoot, and then was dismissed by the producer over concerns over the way he was treating the young actors and replaced by Arthur Barron. Robbie Benson said in his autobiography that they have that sex scene that they have.
Oof.
Where he made the two teenagers get naked on the set. There's no, of course there's no intimacy coaches or anything back then, but there's also no anything. There's no supervision. There's no adults. In New York at the time, if you worked with minors on your film, all you had to do was get a permit from City Hall. That was it.
And call their parents.
Well, and Robbie Benson called his mom and dad and said, he wants me to do this. And his mom said, listen, if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. I trust you. And he's like, I really appreciated that she trusted me, but it's unfortunate that she trusted Joseph Brooks, who then said to him, you're not kissing her right, and then proceeded to demonstrate on a 15-year-old girl how he should, like literally, French kiss this girl, to show him how he should kiss this girl. And he said that he was suddenly found himself like trying to position his body to just keep it, because he knew that there were like crew people who were there to gawk at these two. They were fully naked. In 1979, Joseph Brooks independently made another film called You Light Up My Life, starring Didi Khan, is that her name? Frenchie from Greece. He directed it. He also wrote a song for that called You Light Up My Life. You light up my life. He won an Oscar for Best Original Song for this. In June of 2009, Joseph Brooks is arrested on charges of raping or sexually assaulting 11 women who were lured to his East Side apartment from 2005 to 2008. His assistant, Shawnee Lucier, was charged with helping him. His musician son, Nicholas Brooks, 24, was charged with murdering his girlfriend, Sylvia Cachet, in December 2010. Joseph was indicted on 91 counts and committed suicide in 2011.
Oh my God.
So this is a dark, dark story that accompanies his film projects, including Jeremy.
Even just thinking about like the way that these kids were treated, I just constantly felt like protective of them while watching it, even though they're embarrassing.
Because why did they even have to have sex? This is a movie about young puppy love and how deeply they're so connected, and like they believe that they found the one true person, because that's how stupid you are at that age. They could have just made out and thought that was like the end, basically. And maybe a little heavy petting or something. The fact that they had full-on penetrative sex is ridiculous.
Or it doesn't have to be ridiculous because it happens all the time for kids at that age. But like,
I know.
It's done competently in movies like The Virgin Suicides.
Sure.
Like where you can plot point for point, the decision making.
Yeah.
Yeah. This just felt like exploitation. And
it totally felt like exploitation. I was super uncomfortable. And I say this as someone who is well aware of the fact that there was just something going on in the 70s that is very different from what we have today. And I think that even that era, when people were very tolerant of people fucking teenagers, I feel like people watching that movie at that time would have also felt icky about this.
Fully agree. On to One Hamlet Less. Un Amleto di Meno by Carmelo Bene. Thank God this director knows how long his movie should be. It's only 70 minutes long.
Oh, that's the one saving grace. I have nothing to say about this movie. It looks great. I don't give a shit. And that's it. And it's like 67 minutes long. Thank Christ.
It is a meta telling of the story of Hamlet in the style of like a panto version of Rocky Horror Picture Show. Mm-hmm. It's pretty painful. It's all on a stage that looks like a stage
in Cinecittà. And it looks great. Like, the costumes are so cool. Yeah. But, again, who cares?
But it has the problem that a much better movie, Electra, My Love, by Milos Jancho, has, which is it wants to say everybody's nude, so it's okay, but we really only see boobs and bush.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's always... And this fetishism of, like, nun wimple with naked breasts.
Yeah, That's not my favorite look. Yeah. Shall we move on? I've said enough about this one.
Same.
And then we've got a movie that I like, probably the movie that made me like roll my eyes back in my head. I was bored out of my fucking noggin, and that is The Vows, or A Promessa. And we're not even at Ardennes yet.
Yep.
This is by Antonio de Macedo, and here's the plot. I swear to God, I had no idea how to plot. The gritty lives of Portuguese villagers are shown in this action drama, that's generous, which shows the interaction between a married couple who have taken an unusual vow of celibacy and a gang of gypsies who are terrorizing their village. The film, by the way, that's not like Gypsies of the Isles, where it's okay to say that. That's... we're just calling the Roma that. The film highlights many ancient religious traditions still current in the regions, as the villagers, devout Catholics, support the gypsy con men by buying religious relics from them. And the lead con man always speaks in a low, gravelly, like Reagan voice.
Yeah. The main couple in this film haven't had sex since they got married because... they're very poor. They live in like a 2-room hut next to the ocean, like it is on the beach. And when they got married, they couldn't afford anything, so he became a sacristan in the church, and it saved his father's life. Is that what it was? And they believed that they had to give up their carnal pleasures to God to maintain whatever they had been given through this sacrifice. But they've been sleeping next, like two hot young people who just got married are sleeping next to each other and are managing to avoid getting it on. Come on. And he was cute too.
Yeah. I remember the movie had style. It was just like my God, tell a story.
But also, it's so ridiculous. Like, I don't remember being bored by it because I spent the whole time wondering, am I watching what I'm watching? Like, what is happening?
It was one of the two movies I spent the most time watching the clock, and it's the shortest one of the two that I was doing that with the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. On to our Dans.
The Dand d'Or is our worst in show, the golden turkey for the film that we think really bombed out at this year's festival. And because I've been reading my notes carefully, I know that we did not pick the same film.
That's right. And usually, every year we say, like, oh my God, there's so much to pick from. I swear to God, this is the year that has the most competitors.
It does, although once I saw the one that I chose, there was no question in my mind.
Well, that's because we had like 6 or 7 2-star movies, and then you found the 1-star movie. And I grant you that it might be the worst. I have a special hatred for the one I picked. But please...
That I feel total sympathy for. Yeah.
Go ahead.
My choice is Le Far West by Jacques Brel. Jacques Brel is, of course, one of the most famous and successful singers of all time in France. He was Belgian, but as a French language singer.
Ne me quitte pas. Ne me quitte pas.
Il faut t'oublier. We probably both of us know the Nina Simone version better than
I have it on
Jacques
record.
Brel.
Yeah.
From Pedro Almodovar's Law of Desire, especially. And among many other classic songs, he was quite the chanteur, an influence on more North American singers than European ones. Really cool. Barbara Streisand tells a great story about him in her book, about how she became obsessed with one of his songs, and she flew to Paris with a friend to see his concert. And she was really upset that he didn't sing the one song that she was particularly obsessed with at that time. I don't remember if it was Ne me quitte pas or another song. It wasn't a great experience. And she said it's the thing she thinks about every time she does a concert and has to sing The Way We Were and People for the billionth time, because she's so sick of singing those songs. Yeah. But she says, someone came here just to hear that song. It's their first time at my concert. That's the one song they want to hear. And I have to sing it for them because I remember how it felt for me when I saw Jacques Brel.
What a pro.
Yeah. All of this to say that I don't want to talk about this movie. He also, in his career, acted in a few films, and then he directed 2 films. He directed one right before this, and this is his second one. He didn't go on to do more because, of course, he died very young in 1978 of lung cancer.
Oh, lung cancer? You don't say. The guy is a cigarette.
He is a cigarette. Those teeth are crazy. He is younger than me at this point. He plays a man in a cowboy outfit who shows up in the American West. I don't know where it's actually filmed. It looks like it's like somewhere in Belgium, but he shows up looking for the fantasy of the Wild West. And in the end, we find out that the Wild West is a state of mind, not a place. And he meets up with all of these various characters who are basically the village people. You know, you have this guy dressed as Davy Crockett. You have a lot of people in indigenous costumes. There is not an indigenous person as far as the eye can see in this entire film. And it's just a lot of random haphazard ideas, very poorly strung together, that are impossible to sit through from the minute it begins. This movie is a great way to get me to give up government secrets. Just threaten to make me watch it again. I will tell you everything.
It's a movie in search of an Acme anvil.
Fuck, I hated it so much.
It was really bad. It is true confession. I nodded off through 7 of the movies, woke up and didn't rewind, and this is one of them.
Samesies.
I have no shame. I know.
I have zero shame.
Zero shame.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm still going to say I do the work, because I do the fucking work, and so do you.
You do it. You do it.
Anything else you want to say about Le Far West?
Nope.
On to my movie, which is a much-loved English film from Lindsay Anderson.
Is it?
It's been, in recent years, rescued, and one publication called it one of the best British films of all time.
Wow.
I know. Okay. I know. Fucking bonkers. The movie I'm choosing is Oh Lucky Man by Lindsay Anderson. Lindsay Anderson is a Palme d'Or winner. That's right. I'm picking a Downs by a Palme d'Or winner, though it's not the first time we've done that. We did it with Nanni Moretti.
Yep. This
is part of his Mick Travis trilogy. It begins with If, which is his Palme d'Or winner. Continues with...
...
I know, right? I know. Every time you have to spell that out. If is the first installment in the trilogy, then he brings back Mick Travis in Oh Lucky Man, and then one more time, along with an evil doctor character from Oh Lucky Man in Britannia Hospital, which we talked about in our 1982 episode. Before these movies, he also made a good movie that we talked about in our 63 episode, This Sporting Life.
I like If. I know you're not as big on it, but I like that movie.
I think If is fine. I quite like This Sporting Life. I find it interesting that Lindsay Anderson really did not like one of the 2 Palme winners, given that it is a spiritual sequel or partner movie, a double feature movie with This Sporting Life. It's kind of the same feeling. This movie is about an ambitious coffee salesman who has a series of improbable and ironic adventures seemingly designed to challenge his naive idealism. This movie, it's the problem you have with The White Lotus, where you can't stand people who never learn anything.
Sure.
And implausibly. Not just because they're rubes or dupes. This guy he's arrested and held captive in a military military camp. He's part of lab experiments that he discovers are to turn people into like sheep humanoids, like Island
Right.
of Dr. Moreau. He becomes the fall guy for some embezzler who's in cahoots with corrupt businessmen who have like sort of kleptocratically taken over government in all of these newly independent nations. One of those kleptocrats is an English actor in blackface.
Yep. Who was nominated for a BAFTA.
Jesus Christ!
Because he's also in other roles in the film. Because the other thing about this movie is that a bunch of people play multiple parts.
That's right, including Mr. Grady from The Shining.
And that is meant to be cheeky, having him in blackface. I know why it doesn't fly today, but the multiple casting doesn't feel intentional. It feels this whole movie feels too random and vague for something that is 3 hours long with a musical score. And that's one of the things. It feels like they forgot that they already had these people in different roles. It doesn't feel like they're telling me a particular aspect of the story by having people the same face representing different aspects of a character.
Yes. There was no logic to the stylistic or narrative decisions, some of which actually look quite cool. The choice to have a couple of frames of leader before going to the next scene, like there's just black between some scenes.
Sure.
Like this guy knows how to cut a film.
He does, and that's also why it's not my turkey, because I don't find it that hard to sit through despite the fact that it's too long. It's also because I love Malcolm McDowell. I think he's really sexy and charismatic, and it helps smooth out a lot of other things, but it's not a good movie, and I don't disagree with your choice. It's far too vague. It's this story about our society today with capital letters, basically.
Yes.
And, you have things talking about the military, the healthcare system, economics, capitalism, and where that goes. Not Thatcherism, because that's too early for that, but like where things are going by the end. The fact that Helen Mirren's character is a millionaire's daughter who then is broke, even though she's also playing a different character in like another scene. All of that stuff, but it all feels on the wrong end of just too weird and too random for it to feel expressive and spontaneous and inventive. It's just on the wrong end of that. And what it really feels like is haphazard and off-putting. And the one thing I do like about it is this Greek chorus of Alan Price's songs. Even they all sound like "When I'm 64" by the Beatles, but they're also great.
Completely.
Like they're all good songs.
Yeah, but then I was watching with the subtitles on because I do that with English films, England films. And once I realized that all of the songs were like that correlative with the plot, it started to become grating. I liked them more when they were just abstractions.
Sure.
But he's cute. He's like what Gérard Depardieu is supposed to look like.
He's still with us at the age of 83. This is a movie that's also, I think, about the failures of 70s counterculture. There's one part where you see written on the wall, "Revolution is the opium of the intellectuals." But it doesn't really lean hard enough into exploring that theme or any of its themes. So it just feels... And then on top of that, to be 3 hours long, which suggests a grandeur and an intelligent... epic quality that it doesn't actually have, makes it so much worse. And then, of course, it doesn't help that he showed up at the festival basically saying, "I expect to win this again."
My last word on this, I picked this movie for the reason you picked Enter the Void. Like, it was 3 hours that felt like 6.
Yeah.
I felt like my life wouldn't end.
Yeah. Also, Helen Mirren's first time in competition.
Ooh, she's so cool. Mm-hmm. Now we get to talk about our double Grand Prix, Scarecrow by Jerry Schatzberg and The Hireling by Alan Bridges.
Lansdowne Crescent, my lady.
Yes, thank you very much. Ledbetter,
Yes, my lady?
would you mind very much if I was to sit in the front?
No, well, I wouldn't mind, my lady.
Then I think I will. I wish you wouldn't call me milady all the time.
So we have talked about Alan Bridges before. He has been here one other time in 1982 with The Return of the Soldier. One of the most pleasant surprises of all of these episodes we've recorded so far. We both loved this movie.
Yeah, he mostly made television films and shows, but he made a handful of features, and the ones I've seen, the three I've seen, are all great, and they're all about World War One.
And this movie is similarly handsome. Before we get into what we thought of the movie, though, this is where I want to mention what Lindsay Anderson had said about the film. He said, "I thought the movie that won the prize over my film in Cannes was sentimental muck. Do they think they're being subtle because Sarah Miles never goes to bed with her chauffeur? That is not sour grapes. And I don't think it will be as successful as my film at the box office. You can fool the critics, but you can't fool the public."
And I don't know that either of them were particularly successful, but okay.
Yeah, and I just find that so funny because the Robert Shaw character is the Richard Harris character in This Sporting Life.
Yep.
They're related, for me anyway.
Well, and the end of The Scarecrow is also similar to the end of This Sporting Life.
Yes, totally. This movie, let me quickly pull up a quick synopsis of it because I'm really enjoying doing this.
We're enjoying it too, Greg.
Based on the novel by L.P. Hartley, The Hireling is a dissection of antiquated but hardly dormant British class distinctions as a lonely socialite and her chauffeur become more than friends. This movie is a great example of what the Brits do better than almost anybody else. It's about people who are so fixated, so obsessed with their public image and their social standing that they repress all of their passions and become so devastatingly unhappy. And I love it in The Sporting Life until the ending, and I really love it in this movie. It has this really creepy score that sounds like the score from Dead Again with Emma Thompson, that doesn't feel misplaced or tonally off. Adds some anxiety to the movie, to how much he can't stop thinking about her and how he might have a chance with her, and how she keeps thinking about, is she being normal? Is she acting normal right now? Is this how a normal person would be? Tell me what you thought.
I love this film so much. This is my second time watching it. I think it is so good. It is, as you said, based on a novel by L.P. Hartley, as was The Go-Between, which won the Palme 2 years earlier. As I said, Alan Bridges' films are all about World War I, particularly in examining this idea that the First World War shattered the British class system. And in particular in this film, we have an examination of, did it change things? Did it maybe shake things up but not actually change anything fundamentally?
Yeah.
In the fact that he goes into business for himself instead of being hired by a noble family. And so it gives him an access to her and knowing her in a way that he wouldn't have had otherwise. But does it actually allow for the kind of upward mobility that he dreams about? I read the novel that this is based on a few months ago because I knew we were going to do this eventually and I wanted to read it before we did.
How is it?
It's a good novel, but it's interesting how much Wolf Mankiewicz opens up the screenplay in the way he tells the story. The novel is actually just like he opens this business. He's hired by her or her people. We never see her at the sanatorium as we do in the film. He just picks her up. They have a few conversations. He does make up pretending that he has a wife and all that stuff, which the novel lays bare that is a lie. In this film, it's not explained, but you can tell by the way Robert Shaw is delivering those lines that he's lying, which is a tribute to him as such a fine actor.
He really was.
Yeah, he's younger than me in this movie, by the way, just so you know.
Hey, a little bit of malt liquor does the body good.
Exactly. So in the novel, like he drives her places. He makes an overture to her, tells her he loves her. She says, "Oh my God, I'm so upset, let me out of the car." And then he never sees her again. And the rest of the novel is him driving a friend of hers, and that's how he finds out about her, and finds out about her marrying the other guy who's actually fucking another woman. And then he drives everybody into a wall and kills everybody, including himself. And that's the whole story. And then the movie opens everything up into these much more intricate, elaborate, but still private, incisive, intimate, tense situations that pay tribute to the spirit of the novel without being faithful to the way it plays out, because it wouldn't be an interesting enough movie. We never meet her mother, from what I recall, in the book.
That's like, that should be one of the best, like, that should be celebrated as an example of like what a good film adaptation is. Like,
yes.
Something that doesn't cover something to the letter, but explores its themes and the spirit of it without doing it like scene for scene. That's so cool.
And it's beautiful. It is so beautiful without trying too hard to be a gorgeous period epic. That shot of her holding the candle when she goes downstairs and he's fixing the generator, and the way the candle glows on the wall, it's so evocative.
The shot of from her perspective, looking at the doctor's glasses on the desk, and they obscure the reflection of the room.
And that mother, I love that mother. She is just ghoulish enough to not be a joke.
She totally is.
You know?
Yeah, and I love the MP, the member of parliament who wines and dines her, who gets like cigarettes on his tux. He's so believably slimy, but we also understand why she would hook up with him, because he makes her feel, all of a sudden she feels alive again, and he makes her want to put on nice clothes again, and she can just overlook or pretend his less likable qualities are there.
But she also doesn't care, because her job is to make a good marriage. Yes. Even though she's a widow, so it's not as much of a concern as when she was like a young virgin. But the thing that happens is that the driver, that the hireling does not realize, is that her feeling alive again means that she's willing to take up the responsibilities that her position and her class have of her. Yeah. Which means I'm ready to be in another airless marriage of duty and class, and you know, like I'm not gonna. Yeah, I like my driver, but like, what are people gonna like? I'm gonna hang out with my friends with this guy as my husband? Like that can't happen.
In a way, he's like rebound for her.
Yeah, absolutely, he's a rebound for her, because she's so vulnerable after getting out of treatment that she can't talk to anyone in her own world about the things on her mind. She can only talk to him. But that's partly because he's not a real person to her. She's still a woman of her class.
Her performance, so I've watched this movie twice for this recording. I actually watched a few of the movies a couple times. I didn't get to finish Love and Anarchy, unfortunately, the second time.
It gives Mike a lot of opportunities to walk through that room. You know, just walk on by.
Walk on by.
You're going to do that every time, aren't you?
Yeah. Her performance the first time, I couldn't stop thinking this is what's her name? Like Cloris Leachman in Prancer, like cooped up in her attic, except she also drinks her own pee.
What a reference.
Yeah.
Did you know that Sarah Miles drinks her own pee?
Yeah. Yeah, she drinks her own pee.
Yeah, she said that she's been drinking her own urine for health reasons since 1971.
Did you ever watch My Extreme Addiction?
No.
There's an episode about somebody who's been drinking and consuming all of her urine for like over a decade.
What does a person who does that believe is the health benefit, though?
I mean, maybe the ammonia gets rid of bacteria, but like...
But does it? Like, what is drinking ammonia good for you?
I don't know. I don't know.
In the old days, they used to use it for bleach. Like, they used to use it for cleaning laundry. They would boil urine and then use it to get stains out of fabrics because the ammonia did that. But boiling at first also meant that you weren't, washing things in pee.
Yeah, I just like... Anyway, it's a good movie, The Hireling.
Yeah, Sarah Miles won a special award for her performance. She's great. This is hot off the heels of her Oscar nomination for David Lean's Ryan's Daughter. She was a great actress. The same year that this movie came out is the same year that David Whiting, who was a writer she was having an affair with, or an actor. What was he? She was married to Robert Bolt, who wrote A Man for All Seasons, but she had an affair with David Whiting, and that's this year he was found dead in her motel room. And it took 6 months of inquiry for her to be acquitted in connection with his death, because they finally did rule it a suicide. And then she remarried Robert Bolt in the late 80s when he was very ill, and they were still the best of friends, and she took care of him until she died. So it was quite a scandal. It was like an Angelina Brad Pitt scandal when this happened, and it kind of overshadowed her career, and I don't know, maybe she would have had a better career without, I don't know, but she worked from time to time. She was in Hope and Glory in the late 80s, but she's most famous for the 60s and 70s. She's in The Servant, she's in Blow Up by Michelangelo Antonioni, Ryan's Daughter, and this film.
And notably looks like a goose.
Notably looks like a prototypical Emily Watson.
For sure.
I love this film a lot.
It's beautiful. I would happily rewatch either of these two movies of his, this and Return of the Soldier. On to the Hollywood Renaissance pick.
You think crows are scared of a scarecrow? Crows are laughing.
Crows are laughing.
That's right. Crows fly by, they see that, makes them laugh. Up behind you, Tubin! Eat cantaloupe! You billigan rhinoceros!
Behold, the captains of industry, the prospective owners of Maxie's Car Wash, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Maybe Maxie's Car Wash.
Scarecrow by Jerry Schatzberg. Schatzberg had been here before in 1971 with The Panic at Needle Park, which won Best Actress for its lead. Bill, do you remember what her name is?
Kitty Wynn. Most
Wynn.
famous as the assistant in The Exorcist.
That's right. And Schatzberg would be back again with Sweet Revenge in 1976 and with Reunion in 1989. And despite this many outings and this many decorations for movies of his at Cannes, he's sort of not talked about anymore. I
know, and it's a shame. I saw an interview with him on French TV at this festival, and he just seemed like a lovely, cool guy. And he said, like, I hope my film wins. And he didn't say it in a douchey way. Like, the way he said it, you were like, yeah, I hope that for you too, buddy.
Panic at Needle Park is a well-aged movie about substance use, specifically about use of down. It's very tender, and that's also what I love about this movie. He makes movies about soft people having to get through a very hard world. Yeah. And he does it in a way that is not the wrong end of sentimental. He does it in a way that's very touching and very... There's a lot of affection in his movies, and particularly in this one. This movie's kind of like a Midnight Cowboy on the Other Coast. Yeah, there's a bromantic quality to it that doesn't hit right. There's a feeling that these guys really should not be hanging out. They really shouldn't be friends. And then whenever they reach out to each other, just as one of them is about to abandon the other one and give up on the relationship, they pull each other back in. They also switch positions, which is where you have like the sort of... This movie is kind of a remake of La Strada, you know? The one is tough and cruel. The other one is sweet and light. And then an experience, you know, breaks his heart and turns him cruel. And it makes the other one realize what he missed out on. It's also the ending of Woody Allen's Sweet and Lowdown. I think you want to give us a plot synopsis, though, right? Because that's your fetish. It's kind of what I do. It's really simple. Two drifters bum around, visit earthy women, and discuss opening a car wash in Pittsburgh. Two drifters off to see the world. There's such a lot of world to see. Oh, you're doing the Andy Williams version. We're after the same. Go on. Specifically, Gene Hackman's favorite of his performances. He is, because he does such a good job. There's always the threat of things going very wrong with him if someone says the wrong thing, and we know that because we see it, like the way he wails on that guy in the diner. But like, he doesn't do it that often, and we're kind of worried about it the whole time, while also seeing a man struggling to actually do better. Mm-hmm. And struggling with his feelings about his companion, who he does have an affection for how silly and goofy and lovely he is, but doesn't know how to handle it and doesn't know how to appreciate it. And was Al Pacino ever lovely ever again? Did anyone ever let him be like this ever again? This sort of this clownish Chaplin-esque soul that he has, that is then brutalized when they go to minimum security prison, which still has prison rape, even though it's minimum security prison. Yeah. And he gets beaten within an inch of his life, and then he's never the same again. I mean, he goes into a coma, but you know, it destroys him in more ways than one. Yeah, so the movie is an odyssey of sorts. Gene Hackman has gotten out of prison. Al Pacino is a sailor who's no longer in service. He was in the Navy. He joined the Navy to run away from a newly pregnant girlfriend, and he's come back, and it's like a grown kid, and she's married someone else, played by the great Penelope Allen, here billed as Penny Allen. My favorite. She worked with him a lot. They were friends. He directed her in his Looking for Richard movie. She's also my favorite character in Dog Day Afternoon. What's with the hand? I'm not leaving my girls. God, she's so fucking good in that. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me that. Yes, well, we'll get to that in a second, because, like, talk about a Lady Macbeth scene. These two guys, they meet when they're both hitchhiking. It's, what do we call that when two people are so terribly matched? There's a term for it. Is there? Yeah, like is it Bil and Greg met and became friends? Yeah, you know, or like Oscar and Felix, or Mother and Whore. Sure. Yeah.
Odd Couple? Is that what you're looking at?
They, despite all of their opposite traits, become chums. Hackman convinces Pacino to join him in his pursuit of starting a car wash in Pittsburgh, but along the way they need to go to Detroit, and so that Pacino can finally take responsibility as a new father and meet his son and or child, and
try and make up for his mistake of the past,
and bring a lamp that he's carrying around with him. Along the way, they visit Gene Hackman's sister. They go to jail.
She's great too.
She's also strangely beautiful in a Kira Sedgwick way.
Very beautiful. This is an interesting movie for the small roles played by women. The other one is played by the great Anne Wedgeworth, who is best known from my childhood as Lana on Three's Company. Oh, Jack, finally! And she also is the one who makes the armadillo cake in Steel Magnolia. She played a lot of oversexed Southern sex pets in her career.
She plays Kathy Baker in Edward Scissorhands every time.
Yes. But for a decade where women virtually vanished off the screen, and every Best Supporting Actress nominee in this decade is a 2-scene cameo, it is amazing how rich even though they're not rich with screen time, but they are rich in presence in this film, the women in this film. They make a deep impression.
And then Penny Allen gets this close-up in the last act that is mind-blowing, where...
Yeah, she's incredible.
Basically, when Pacino finally talks to his ex, she steals the show. She's really, really good. And the movie kind of ends on a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest kind of note. That has hope in it, but is also heartbreaking.
Because he hasn't really changed, but he has changed in a way that he's not necessarily aware of.
And then, one of the best examples of cut to black before credits.
Yeah, I love a lot of elements of this movie. There's a lot of subtleties I noticed. I hadn't watched this movie in a very, very long time, and shout out to my very dear friend Steve, who showed me this movie one of the first times I went to his place when we used to basically watch 2 movies, and I would show him something that I thought he should see, and he would show me something, and we would, because we knew what we hadn't seen. And I have a great deal of affection remembering the night that we watched this. And I was really happy to watch it again, especially now because it's on DVD. It's in widescreen, so you can really appreciate this cinematography by Vilmos Zsigmond, who makes a great deal of art out of a movie that is otherwise not concerned with being beautiful. And I think it's beautifully photographed. He later won an Oscar for Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh, wow.
He's passed away now, but his most recent nomination was for The Black Dahlia by Brian De Palma in 2006.
That movie looks great. It's bad, but it looks great.
Yeah, I mean, he was a definitive photographer of that decade. But subtleties I noticed, like when they go to that bar, one of the many bars that is lit by red light, as they all are in the 70s. They come home. Gene Hackman comes home with a woman, and Al Pacino comes home with a mannequin. If you remember, he's holding a mannequin.
That's right.
Character subtleties like that I find really, really interesting in what they tell visually without overstating it. The fact that Al Pacino asks him, or his lion is his name, he asks him, "How'd you get laid in prison?" He asks him that early on in the film, which of course comes to play. Richard Lynch is that blonde guy who attacks him in prison, who, if you notice, he has that very scarred skin.
Yeah.
Because he, in real life, was a drug addict in the 60s who set himself on fire in Central Park while he was high and survived, but of course was very deeply scarred by it, and thankfully went sober after that. And you also know that it's the 70s because the end of the movie, those guys are playing with kids at that fountain for hours before the moms care, and it's not until that kid almost drowns that a mom actually steps in and is like, "What are you doing with my kid?"
Yeah.
And then, as you say, the ending, like with the ticket lady, nothing softens.
No.
I think this is a very, very admirable, subtle, small, but deeply felt, emotionally expansive film. I think it's really good.
And I feel like Gene Hackman's character has this similar quality to Jean-Pierre Léaud in The Mother and the Whore, where they don't change by the end of the movie. We believe when the movies are done that their personality traits are ingrained. Like, they're probably stuck as they are. Like, therapy is not advanced in the 70s. And yet we don't hate them. We don't judge them. No. We accept them on their terms, or we accept them at least on common terms, and we feel like we get them a bit.
They don't change, but I wonder if Pacino's character will have that openness ever again.
Yeah,
because It's a movie about a world where beauty cannot survive, and he is the sort of innocent beauty that is then destroyed. Yeah.
Well said. That's, yeah. Oh, when you put it like that, it adds an extra kind of element of sadness to it.
Yeah. I mean, first because of the upbraiding he gets when he calls his wife, thinking that his willingness to apologize for the past was enough, and it turns out it's not. But then this happens to them, and
this really low security prison where you can just do anything. It's like...
Yeah, there's a lot of beatings without security
around.
guards around. Yeah. It's like a penal farm is actually what it is. And that's also the thing that makes Gene Hackman realize that he hadn't been appreciating this quality of this guy for so long. Because he hated his vulnerability. And then he realized that it's actually what he wanted. It's a movie about toxic masculinity in many ways, even though it wouldn't have been described in those terms at that time. And it's a lot like Panic in Needle Park. That's also a tender movie about soft people in a hard world and the way that they are trying to survive. And it's a very sympathetic movie about drug addiction in a world that's very judgmental about it.
And I feel like it's also, without being too knowledgeable in like downstream economics, like it feels like it's about promises made and not kept to this generation of men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also a time of economic crisis. I mean, this movie is set in the same year as Licorice Pizza, you know, when you see all those people lining up around the block for gas because of that crisis.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that happening. It's also a movie about people. They start off in California, they go to Denver, and their goal is to go east. And road movies are usually the opposite. You're usually heading west in search of the answers. American road movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I never thought about that. Interesting point. Would you have given your palm to either of the Hireling or Scarecrow?
I think these are great choices. I love that they both won. I think they're both great movies, but there is no doubt in my mind that the Palme d'Or is The Mother and the Whore, and that it's the only. I mean, it's especially for the Cannes Film Festival. That's the movie that should be number one.
I wholeheartely agree. I think this movie is a monumental achievement. Like it's like an earthquake in the decade. I would have loved to have seen a double Best Actor win for Scarecrow, because I could have given the special Grand Prix to Love and Anarchy. And I'd be happy. And the Hireling has this small, little, it's a small little British confection that I'm happy to give a jury prize to.
It would win a screenplay award today.
Total. Well, I mean, it's screenplay. It is the best screenplay of the bunch.
Yeah.
And Bill, if you could give the Palme d'Or to any movie from 1973, what movie would you give it to?
I'm torn. I'm going to do an ex aequo because I haven't done one in a long time, and you have been taking liberties with that shit for a while. So I'm just going to do it because I can't decide between my two favorites of 1973, even though for North Americans they were films of 74.
Okay.
And so I'm going to go with Amarcord by Federico Fellini. It's not his best film. It's a movie I have a great deal of affection for. I think it's so beautiful, and it's epic and gorgeous and lush. It's his last masterpiece as well, although I liked And the Ship Sails On from 1983 as well. And I'm going to tie that with Day for Night because it's Truffaut's most enjoyable film. Also not his best, but still great. It's such a great... I love how it looks at filmmaking in these incisive and detailed ways that are also fantastical and silly and indulgent. And it's got no end of great performances. I mean, Valentina is the best because the character is amazing, but Nathalie Baye is in it, and Dany, and Jean-Pierre Léaud,
and Jacqueline Bisset.
Jacqueline Bisset and her fucking tub butter. I can't get enough of it. She's so good. And Truffaut playing himself as the director is great too.
So cute.
So cute. And so is Léaud. This is the peak of Léaud's cuteness as a twinky little French fool. He could be in the band Yell in this period of his life.
Totally.
So yeah, I love both those films. So those are my two top picks of 1973.
Great choices. I regret I didn't carve out enough time to rewatch Amarcord because it's been since I was a teenager. But I did get to watch Day for Night before we recorded, and I think that movie is a masterpiece, and I look forward to rewatching it.
Yeah.
I feel, and when I watched it, I felt like, where's this been my whole life? I felt bad I hadn't seen it yet because it was so good. My choice, I'm not going to go ex aequo because, as you say, I've been greedy.
You haven't, but, I feel like Gilles Jacob, it should be discouraged, except under the most extreme of circumstances, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't make the call today. I'm a weak, tired man.
Adult me will be rewatching Day for Night and The Mother and the Whore way more than the movie I'm going to pick. But the movie I'm going to pick is a movie is one of the movies I've seen the most, and I do think it is can-sized. It has that epic quality, and that is William Friedkin's The Exorcist.
I mean, it was an option for me too.
By the 20th time you've seen it, you start to laugh at Olive Reagan's shenanigans.
Sure.
The parts that stand out to me as palm-worthy are the prologue in Iraq, the scene where she's walking around, I think it's like a racetrack with Father Karras.
Yep.
Saying,
Jason Patrick's father.
Telling him for the first time that she thinks her daughter is possessed.
Yep.
Every scene with Lee J. Cobb. The movie is...
Well, it's a game changer. There wasn't any horror movies like that before that. Well, and they all became like that after.
Well, and this is the joke when people started talking about elevated horror post A24. And it's like, motherfuckers, the most elevated period of horror is from 1968 to 1974.
Yeah.
It was all established then. And this movie is this really sad story about a mother and her struggling to figure out what's wrong with her daughter's mental health. And then it goes full tilt boogie, Rosemary's Baby, Hail Satan.
It's also understandable to me why Jane Fonda called this movie capitalist bullshit when she turned it down, because it's also a story about a single mother who doesn't care that she's not married and isn't sorry about it and is punished for it by having the devil come and live in her house. she refuses to have a man in her house instead.
Yeah, and just like Ellen, every single performance in this movie is amazing. We've talked about this before, but Max von Sydow is 100 years old in this movie when he's actually 42.
Yep.
Yeah, I just love it.
Kitty Wynn. Yep.
And Kitty Wynn.
It's a good choice. It's a rare case of a movie that my sister has been like, let's go see that. Like, we've seen it on the big screen twice in retro screenings, and my sister's not a horror person, but she loves it.
Yeah.
So.
Bill, won't you tell our listeners what we're getting up to next?
Well, Greece has won the Palme d'Or once, and we're going to talk about it in our next episode when we fast forward up to 1998 and talk about the Palme d'Or winner, Eternity in a Day, Mia Agnotita che mia mera, by Theodoros Angelopoulos.
I'm excited. I'm excited to watch my very first Angelopoulos movie. See you then.
Thank you for listening to Riviera Rats.
Our podcast is hosted and produced by Bill Antoniou and Gregory Roseborough.
Our music is by Joe Organ.
Our artwork is by Leo Kuvaris.
Follow us on Instagram at Riviera Rats.
Write to us at ratsriviera@gmail.com.
If you want to support our show, tell your friends about us.
Leave us a rating and a review on whatever podcast app you use.